Story 1. Cousin slept with my wife, so I got him to confess while drunk and sent the video to my family. Here is my story. Before my wife and I became a thing, we had always been family friends. Her mother was a close friend of my mom, and they used to come around our house a lot when she was a child. My wife and I did not get along so well as children because I used to tease her a lot, but when we became adults, a lot changed. Seeing her often contributed to me falling in love with her, and months after that we started dating. According to my wife, I was her first real love, and the rest of her college relationships were just her testing the waters. When we started dating, we told our family about us, and they approved of our relationship because she was no stranger to our family. But before we married, we had a serious fight that led to us nearly breaking up. So, there's this cousin of mine that had been my rival since I was a child. He was my maternal cousin, a couple of years older than me. My mom's younger sister had him when she was 16, while my mom waited till 21 to have me with my dad. I can't explain why, but my cousin and I always fought or struggled for something. No matter how our mothers tried to force us, we never seemed to get along. He was also a low-key bully who constantly bullied me all the time, but he'd act well-behaved whenever he was with our parents or any adult around. What caused my wife and me to nearly break up was my wife, who was my girlfriend then, making out with him at a family reunion we had. When I caught them, I was so mad. She knew he was my rival, yet she didn't push him away when he made advances at her. She allowed him to kiss her, which nearly destroyed our relationship. It took me about 3 months for us to make up after that fight, and that was after I looked at things from her angle and realized that she was strongly under the influence of alcohol. Now that I share this, I wish I ended things with her then. Maybe she wouldn't have caused me so much pain. After all those years, after my wife and I married, we moved to the state where we worked and only visited our hometown on holidays and important occasions. We were both happy with our lives and lived below our means. We knew kids were not coming into the picture yet, so we never talked about children. In the end, I tried my best to be a great husband, and I supported my wife financially, emotionally, and spiritually, and in the other wheels of life she needed my support. Aside from our families, we were all we got between my wife and me. I was the person who only visited our parents on special occasions or invitations, but my wife tried as much as she could to visit our hometown at least twice a month. Her mother was very sick, and as the only child, she needed to go back and spend some time with her on some of the weekends. She visited her mother. She would sleep over and return on Sunday evenings. This way, she would get to spend time with her mother and see my parents as well. All this while my wife was visiting our hometown. She never returned to tell me that she had seen any of my old friends or hers. She always sounded like the only people she saw were my family and her family, and it felt odd for someone who grew up in the same town with a dozen friends who still live there. For almost a year, my wife continued to visit our hometown twice a month, even when her mother recovered from her illness. My wife didn't stop visiting. She said she was drawn to our town and loved how she visited everyone, at least to stay connected to our family. When she said this, I should have suspected something fishy was going on, but I didn't have any reason to doubt my wife because I trusted her and didn't think she would betray me. By this time, we had been married for 2 years, and our bond had strengthened. 2 months before Christmas, my parents decided to renew their wedding vows because they had been married for 30 years and wanted to reignite their old love. As expected, my wife and I attended the party, and we arrived a day before to help with some things. The next day after the party, my wife suggested that we spend at least one more day with our families, mainly because it had been a long time since I had visited. I agreed, and we stayed for the small family after-party. At the after-party, my cousin, who had always been my rival and the favorite child of the house, was there too. Knowing I would stay, I invited some of my old friends to get wasted with me. Later that night, while my friends and I, my cousin, and a few other people were drinking and chatting about different unimportant things, my cousin got drunk and began to make a scene. From his childhood, he had always been a bragger around me. It was almost like he always wanted me or everyone to know he was doing better than me, even though he was born out of wedlock. Immediately my cousin started making a scene. My friend and I laughed about an old memory at the top of our voices, and my cousin got attracted. Instead of continuing with his drama and blabbing, he turned in my direction and started to say things. He began abusing me in my marriage, and when I did not respond, he got pissed and began to tell everyone how he had been sleeping with my wife. The first time he mentioned sleeping with my wife, I thought he was only saying that to get to me, but when he mentioned how she'd come to our hometown on weekends and how they had fun together, I knew he wasn't lying. At this point, the only thing that felt right was to record him as he bragged. So I took out my phone and recorded him as he bragged and exposed his secret. My cousin even went as far as saying that he slept with my wife on purpose to show me that he could also have whatever I had. I was so disappointed in my wife when I heard everything, and I couldn't even hide the embarrassment. When it seemed like his bragging would not end, I was forced to leave everyone. As soon as I got into my parents' house, I met my wife talking to my parents, and I began to yell at her. Before I left my cousin and my friends, I had already sent the video to my wife so she would know that I knew about her affair. But after she saw it, she told me not to believe anything my cousin said because he was drunk. I believed everything my cousin said because he wouldn't have talked about it if he did not sleep with my wife as he bragged. He would have simply bragged about something else, but not my wife. I was so angry that I confronted her in front of my parents, and after yelling and yelling, she admitted in tears that there were a couple of times she mistakenly slept with my cousin, the one person she knew I hated so much. My parents had to intervene and were so disappointed that my wife was cheating on me. Her mom, who was also in the room with my parents, was so disappointed in her, and she left the house in shame. I had also dropped the recording of my drunk cousin on our WhatsApp family group chat, and everyone had finally seen that he wasn't the good person they all thought he was. That night, I didn't sleep at home because I could not stand the shame and embarrassment, so I drove to a nearby motel. My parents and wife kept calling me the whole night, but I didn't take anybody's call. The following day, I texted my mom that I was returning to the town I lived in and left my wife there. She also came home later that evening, but I had packed my clothes and other valuables, and I left the house for her. When she called me that evening to ask where I was, I told her it was over between us and that my lawyer would be the next person she would hear from. I wasn't ready to listen to her explanation, so I blocked her number and blocked her on all of our mutual social media platforms. Our divorce was difficult for me, but I went through with it. We are divorced now, and my family sees her differently now. My mom and her mom are still friends, but she isn't welcome to our house. I have learned a lesson, and whenever I see red flags in my future relationships, I will not try to justify them because a leopard never changes its spots. Anyways, 3 years have passed, and I have not been able to completely forget that night. It still haunts me in my sleep. As for my cousin, there can never be any form of friendship between us because he is no different from an animal. Many things have changed in my family after everyone saw him brag in that video, and I'm pleased with the new way they treat him. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Caught my wife cheating with 2 guys, so I ruined them all and got revenge. Hello everyone, I'm 33M. Before I delve into my story, my question is, what would you do if you walked in on your wife, whom you trusted so much, making out with 2 men on your bed? The first time I met my wife, Tracy, 29F, was at the movies. I had gone to watch a newly released movie with my friends, and she was there with her girls' gang. We kicked things off that day. Soon, we started seeing each other. We dated for a year and eventually married. What started as a mere friendship became one of my saddest love stories. At the beginning of our marriage, it felt like being married to Tracy was a blessing. We were happy together, and I did all I could as a man and her husband to support her dreams and push her to be more. For the first 2 years, we had a good marriage. Tracy was also sweet, supportive, and smart. I'd love to say that she was everything I wanted in a woman. A great cook, a fantastic personality, an elegant person, and she was truthful. If there was anything I loved in her the most, it was her truthfulness. While Tracy worked in a fast food restaurant, I was a graphic designer and worked with the organization that printed banners, billboards, designs, etc. We both earned a decent amount of money, but I did most of the spending at home because Tracy used her money to pursue her passion. Before Tracy and I married, she told me that being an actress was her childhood dream, but she never got the opportunity to do what she loved because her parents did not support her dreams. Her parents insisted she study something else in college because being an actress was not as noble as she saw it. When Tracy told me about her lifelong dream and her interest in still becoming an actress, if it was okay by me, I told her it was fine. For someone who didn't pursue the profession I loved, I knew what it felt like to be passionate about something and not do it, so I supported Tracy in signing up for drama clubs, volunteer roles, and other acting roles that pushed her closer to her passion and dreams. Also, we planned that she would go to a theater arts academy in the years to come once we had enough money saved. Another reason I supported Tracy to pursue her career as an actress was because she was naturally talented in acting. Aside from being an annoying drama queen, she was so good at acting. Before I met her, she had taken a couple of courses and watched about 1,000 videos on YouTube. Doing all of these things showed how serious she was, and I didn't want to be the one who would stop her dreams. We paused on having kids because of our plans for Tracy and her academy. We planned to start having children after she graduated from the academy. At least, I believed she would land good roles in plays, dramas, or even movie roles by that time. I even think that it was I who kept encouraging her to volunteer for dramas, plays, and other roles because she could land big roles by showing people how good and talented she was. I did everything because I wanted the best for her, and I wanted her to be successful. When Tracy asked if I was cool with her pursuing her passion as an actress, we were still in the first year of our marriage, and by that time everything was still lovey-dovey between us. We never fought or had any serious arguments. She was like a sweet peach who respected and treated me with love. For that first year, Tracy kept applying for different volunteer roles online but couldn't get anything. There was a time when she even got tired of applying because she wasn't getting any response. She decided to focus on her new job, but I kept encouraging her not to give up. Luckily, months after we celebrated our first anniversary, she got a response from one of her applications. It was a play, and they wanted a couple of new actors and actresses. Tracy was over the moon when she got the mail, and I was so happy for her. The good thing was that the screening was held in the same town we lived in, so she had enough time to prepare. When D-Day came, Tracy passed her screening, and she was selected. She was so happy when she broke the news. Another good news was that they would pay them for their time. Their rehearsals for the play were mainly on Saturdays and Sundays. I didn't know or expect Tracy to change entirely once she started rehearsals. The first few weeks of her rehearsals, nothing changed between us. Our communication was still excellent, and we did everything we used to do. The only difference was that we spent less time on weekends than before. The rehearsal occupied her weekends because she would wake up in the morning, clean the house, cook, leave for rehearsals, and return in the evening. Even though I wasn't comfortable with the new development, I couldn't voice it out because I didn't want to blow her first official opportunity. Besides, her weekend compensation was greater than what she earned the entire week. As weeks passed, Tracy and I started to become distant. To keep myself busy, I started playing video games, hanging out with some friends, or inviting them over to my house. My friends were people I had known since high school and college, so I trusted and listened to them. When I told them about Tracy's passion for acting and her gig that took her time, one of my friends, Eric, told me to monitor Tracy closely because there were rumors of women sleeping with their directors to land good roles. But I discarded his advice and assured them that Tracy wasn't like that and didn't sleep with anybody to get the role because she was very talented. Stupid me. Yeah, with my response, they didn't talk about her again. They only advised me to monitor her closely because new actors and actresses like Tracy had a high infidelity rate. I didn't take their words to heart because I was 100% sure at that time that Tracy wouldn't do anything to hurt me or ruin her happy marriage. But despite not taking their words to heart, it still remained in my head, and subconsciously, I found myself being weird about Tracy and asking her weird questions. When Tracy noticed how different I had become, she complained about the questions I asked her and how I had been treating her. So I was forced to apologize and tell her what my friends said. After I told Tracy everything, she just laughed and said she couldn't cheat on me because she loved me so much and, in her words, "You're the best husband in the world, and only a foolish and ungrateful woman would cheat on you." When she said that, I had inner peace knowing that Tracy wouldn't cheat on me. I wish I didn't know she was only doing what she knew to do best, acting, and that she had been cheating on me even before we had that conversation. Tracy changed so much in the following weeks in a way I can't even describe. Our conversations started feeling forced, and that excitement she had whenever she returned home disappeared. Before she changed, Tracy was literally a parent. She would come home and tell me about everything that happened during their rehearsals. Even though I had never been to their rehearsals, I knew all the names of everyone who rehearsed with her, how they looked, and their different personalities. This was because Tracy told me everything about them. We were that close, and I always looked forward to her updates every weekend. But everything stopped. In addition to her withdrawal, Tracy started being defensive. She took offense to almost everything I said, even with old jokes that used to crack her up before. She started feeling like I was attacking her with my jokes, or I referred to her in most things I said. Then she upgraded her wardrobe. She had dresses she wore specifically on their rehearsal days, and they were pretty exposing. I complained about her outfits several times, but she didn't listen. She said they were the clothes in vogue and I was old school. While she did all these, I thought she was only trying to keep up with the other actresses who dressed better than her. I knew she was competitive fashion-wise, so the last thing that crossed my mind was her cheating. I started getting suspicious when she would change her hairstyle every week and was always on the phone talking with a man she claimed she was acting with. One day, she did something that really pissed me off, and when I voiced out my anger, she yelled at me and walked out on me. It was the first time she did something like that, and I immediately knew I had to do something about it. Later that evening, I talked to my friends when they came over, and they bet that Tracy was already cheating on me. Even with all the signs and changes I had seen, I couldn't believe Tracy was cheating on me because I made a lot of sacrifices for her to get to the level she was. I argued with them that maybe Tracy was having a tough time, and she was taking out the frustration on me. They insisted that I was blinded by love and that I should hire a private investigator if I wanted to find out if Tracy was cheating on me. I didn't like the idea of someone following Tracy around, but I subscribed to it because of her change in attitude. The following week, I found a private investigator online and hired him to follow Tracy for a week. On the third day of the week, when the PI was following her, Tracy did not come home after her rehearsals. The following day, when she returned home, she said she went to a club for one of her fellow actresses' birthday parties. She had to crash with them at a nearby hotel because she thought it was safer than coming home from a far distance. The funny thing was she didn't inform me about the birthday party, and I kept calling her phone until 3 a.m. when she picked up the call. By 3 a.m., she said she didn't hear it ring because of the loud music in the background. Then she lied that she told me about the all-night birthday party, but I wasn't listening. I suspected she was lying, but I knew I would find out the truth because the PI was following her for 7 days. I didn't hear back from the PI, and by the time I heard back from him, I was out of town to visit my parents. I was on my way home when the PI informed me that he had some things to show me. So instead of driving home, I went to meet him at his location. Meanwhile, Tracy did not know I was coming home that day. We spoke the day before, which was Friday, and I told her I'd be coming home on Monday morning because I felt I would spend more time with my parents. But I ended up returning on Saturday. When I met my PI, he showed me things that shattered me and made me speechless. He had photos and videos of Tracy with a blonde guy who turned out to be her affair partner. There were pictures of them making out in Tracy's car, going shopping, eating out, and a video from the night Tracy told me she went to one of her fellow actresses' birthday parties at a club and didn't hear the phone ring. Through that video, I found out that she was with him the entire night. They went clubbing together but left around 10 p.m. And they drove to his apartment where she spent the rest of the night. So it meant she had seen my calls but deliberately refused to take them. I was shocked that Tracy cheated on me. She looked like someone with whom I could build a promising future, but she blew that up. So after the PI showed me all those pictures and videos, he told me he followed Tracy that evening too, and she was currently with her affair partner in my home. Before he left to call me at that moment, I was so full of rage, and I wanted to break things. I was too angry to drive, so my PI drove me to my house. When we got there, I met a blue Toyota Venza parked in my driveway, and I instantly recognized the car. It was the exact car I saw in the pictures and videos, and I instantly knew Tracy was in there with her affair partner. My PI opted to follow me, but I don't recall whether I agreed. The next thing I knew, I was in the house, and as I opened our bedroom door, I met Tracy and two men in the act, in their positions. The tall blonde guy was on top of Tracy, and the other man was sucking her down. I was wild with anger and didn't know which of the men to attack first. Tracy wore one of those SLSH netty lingerie, and her two hands were cuffed to the bed. She tried to get up when she saw me, but her movement was restricted. I attacked the blonde guy while the other man picked up his clothes and scurried away like a rat. Thankfully, my PI had come in with me, and he stopped me from committing murder. While all this happened, Tracy was still cuffed to the bed and already started begging me. She said I was mistaken and was only rehearsing her role for the play with the man. Hearing her stupid excuse enraged me, and I felt like choking her in that vulnerable position, but I left the room and told her to be out of my house by the time I returned. After I left the house with my PI, he told me that he had recorded everything and shared the video with me. I didn't know what to do with the video, but I still took it from him. That night, I crashed at one of my friend's places. I was so embarrassed that he was right about Tracy and her new acting career. What was even more heartbreaking was Tracy having a threesome in our room and in our bed. When I got home the next morning, Tracy was still in the house. She didn't go to her rehearsals because she knew she had messed up. When I met her at home, my anger escalated, and I kicked her out of the house and threw her stuff on the lawn while she begged me. She kept saying that I was making a mistake and I should let her explain what really happened. She stayed outside for almost an hour shouting my name and pleading that I let her in. But after acting like she was remorseful, she became abusive, called me names, and left afterward. This happened last week, and I finally dared to share it here because I have not been myself since the day I caught Tracy with those two guys. I don't know how all of this happened right under my nose. I wasn't that over-pampered Tracy or anything. We shared the bills. She did most of the chores, and I always controlled my emotions around her. I'm saying this because I've seen stories where most men ignore the red flags. Now that I think of it, I should have started my investigation from the moment our communication dropped and she upgraded her wardrobe. But is that how marriage is meant to be? Suspect your spouse when he or she gets new clothes or stops talking to you like they used to because they are always tired when they return from work? I don't think so. The most annoying thing is that she has been calling my phone nonstop since I kicked her out. I have been thinking of the perfect revenge and want to show the video I got to her director. Update 1. Hello everyone. Thank you for your comments. I'm glad you all don't think it's too extreme. So someone commented that I did a little investigation on the second guy in the video, and I did. Guess what, guys? I discovered he's gay and is currently in a relationship with Tracy's director. Tracy's director is homosexual, and I can imagine how angry and betrayed he will feel when he finds out that Tracy seduced his boyfriend. Speaking of Tracy, she showed up at my place 3 days ago. She looked so miserable, and her eyelids were swollen from crying. Unfortunately for her, my friends were at home when she came to beg me. Although they didn't say anything to her, their body language and eye rolls annoyed Tracy. She got so annoyed to see me hanging out with my friends while abandoning her that she yelled at me. So this is it, Mike, you'll let your friends disrespect your wife like this because of a small disagreement between us? The whole time Tracy was pleading with me on the porch, I didn't say or do anything. I was inside the house listening to her, but when she shamelessly made that statement, I charged out of the house to give her the hearing of her life, but my friend stopped me. At that moment, I was ready to be arrested for assault and wanted to be worthy of the charge. Before she left my house that day, she made a scene. She started talking about all the promises we had made to each other and how I promised to grow old with her. I was so angry, but I couldn't do anything even if I wanted to. After waiting for a while and she didn't get any response from me, she asked about the theater arts academy that I promised to support her in. I wanted to go out and tell her to go to her affair partners for support, but I wanted her to stop talking and leave already, so I didn't respond. After waiting for a while, she eventually left in shame. I have already contacted a divorce lawyer, and once the papers are ready, he will send them to her to sign. Concerning the revenge, I will do as you guys have said. I understand that showing the video to her director might not destroy her career, but it will ruin everything she has worked hard for months. Sending the video to her director has even made me more excited now that I know Tracy cheated on me with her director's boyfriend. Thank you, everyone. I will make another update soon. Update 2. Hey guys. I'm so excited to make this update because things became messier for Tracy than I expected after I made the last update. Took me 2 weeks to search for her director online, and I found him. He is just someone starting out in the movie industry as a director, and so far he has been making waves. So Tracy's director and I fixed a day to meet each other, and he showed up. He was hooked on meeting me because I told him I had something to show him about his partner and one of his actors. When we met that day, I didn't waste time talking. We exchanged pleasantries, and I showed him the video of his boyfriend, the blonde guy, and Tracy. He was so disappointed and heartbroken that he cried. No kidding. He told me he suspected his boyfriend was doing something with one of the cast members, but he wasn't sure because he never caught them. Also, he claimed his boyfriend had cheated on him once in the past, but he, the director, forgave his partner because he pleaded it happened while he was under the influence of alcohol. Honestly, I wasn't so interested in what his boyfriend had done. I was more interested in what he would do to Tracy and her affair partner. When I asked him what he would do with them, he said he didn't think of anything yet. I told him it would be weak of him to let them go off the hook like that, especially after what Tracy did to him. To cut the story short, Tracy's director fired Tracy and her blonde affair partner. But I don't know if he broke up with his boyfriend after that. When Tracy was fired, I was glad to see her hard work scatter like dust in the wind. I wanted her to feel the pain of putting her 100% into something, but it ended up being destroyed by someone else. By the time Tracy got fired, the divorce papers were ready, and my lawyer sent them to her. The day she got the papers, she called me and begged that I shouldn't ruin everything we suffered hard to build. I told her she ruined it the day she started nursing the thoughts of cheating on me. I told her I was the one who showed the video that ruined her months of hard work with her director. I knew she would flip when she heard that, and she did. She said she knew I was jealous of her and hated that she could pursue her passion and I couldn't. I just laughed because I knew what she was trying to do, and I hung up the call. She signed the divorce papers 2 weeks ago, and I'm making this update as a divorced man. Although it hurts, I'm glad she is no longer in my life. Thank you, everyone, for all your comments and support. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Me, 36M, found out my wife, 34F, has been cheating on me. I don't know what to do. Let me start with some backstory. We've been together for almost 17 years, have 3 kids, and an old house we've been slowly restoring over the last 2 years. Our budget is not the greatest, no savings and lots of debt. She's the only woman I've ever been with, and before me, she had only a couple of one-night stands. So we were both little experienced when we met. She's been the light of my life, and we've gone through some difficult times together and always been there for each other. I thought we were one of the few who managed to stay on course no matter what. Apparently, I was wrong. With all that was going on, trying to fix the house, both working full-time, trying to make ends meet, and to make sure the kids are doing fine, we kind of lost ourselves. The bad financial situation and health-related issues didn't help either. My wife had been trying to lose weight for a long time, but nothing seemed to work for her, and her self-esteem was down to the floor. We were both depressed, but instead of talking and consoling one another, we suffered in silence. I buried my nose in computer games to hide from our problems while she had her nose in her phone all the time. This spring and summer, things started going worse. She was spending more time with her friends and going partying while I stayed at home with the kids. I thought that if I let her blow off some steam, she would come home in a better mood, but that didn't work at all. I tried to ignore the bad feeling that was starting to sink in my stomach. I had heard a rumor that she had been seen kissing some dude at a dance in a nearby town. I confronted her about it, but she denied it and said that the guy had tried to kiss her, but she pushed him away. I was not fully convinced but didn't want to push her too much as I was trying to let her see that I trusted her. Yet, as the summer passed, I noticed she was getting way more protective and secretive about her phone. After seeing by chance what her Facebook password was one night in August 22nd, I decided to take a look to see if I could find anything about that dance earlier that summer. What I found was way worse. I saw that indeed she had been kissing some dude, drunk as hell, until her friend pulled her out of it. But that's nothing compared to what I saw next. I accessed her Messenger and Skype. I found out that she had been chatting online with 2 foreign guys, A and B, for months. It had started on Instagram. Some random dude sent her some flattering messages, and she started talking to him on Skype after that in early June. After only speaking to him for less than 2 weeks, she started sharing with him nude photos after only resisting a bit. The incident with the guy she kissed happened later that month. She was chatting with this guy up until the midst of August when he showed his real intention. He was a scammer with a stolen account and was just sending her pictures from that stolen profile. Yet she had been fooled enough to share with him pictures of her most intimate parts. She seemed like she was falling in love with him by then. She had already started to talk to Guy B, which also started on Instagram. It didn't take long for that to evolve to nude pictures and sexual talk. In both cases, they were fantasizing about them coming to our country and meeting with my wife at a hotel. She never spoke ill of me or anything like that, just talked about me like I was just there. If they asked, she said that I treated her well, but then she went on to tell them how she liked to talk to them and they made her feel good. The worst is yet to come. In one of the chats with a female friend of hers, I found some more disturbing things. They went together to a 2-day town festival in another nearby town in early July, stayed at a rented room, which I, of course, had agreed to and thought would be okay. I knew that my wife's friend, who has trouble with panic attacks, had needed to stay overnight at the local hospital. But what I didn't know and saw in the chat between them was that she mentioned a 41-year-old guy from our own town. Guy C, a married man with kids who was unhappy in his relationship, and she had met him that night. He had come over to chat and had tried to go all the way, but my wife told her friend that she had stopped him. She didn't mention the name, but I found out a likely suspect as our town is small, and I also found in my online phone records that she had sent a message to a number belonging to a guy that fit the description. I fear the worst. I didn't let my wife know what I had found yet as I was afraid what would happen while the kids were around. So I put up a mask and waited until Saturday, 24th of August, to confront my wife. I had called my mother and got her to take care of the kids. My wife is taking some classes to get some form of degree for her work, and when she came home from class, I asked her calmly to sit with me, and I told her about what I knew. There was no violence, yelling, or bad-mouthing. Just 2 sad people, one of them angry and hurt, and we talked the whole night. She promised that nothing had happened between her and C, and what she had done online was only to try boosting her self-esteem a bit, as she thought I'd stopped loving her. She didn't exactly try to blame me for it, nor did she yell at me for snooping around. She said she thought I didn't like her anymore because she wasn't losing weight, and when those guys started raining compliments on her, she said she got addicted. She said she didn't mean to hurt me. She was selfish and tried to please them as she could, so they would keep complimenting her, therefore sending them nude pictures. She told me that she saw it now that she had been cheating on me, but she hadn't realized it while she was doing it, even though she knew she was doing something wrong. I wanted to believe her. I truly did, but I had concerns. We decided to try to fix our marriage and seek counseling. As the weeks passed, things seemed to be getting better. She's been way more affectionate to me and caring. Our sex life has been great. We've been spending way more time together than before. I still had a growing feeling in my stomach that she was hiding some critical information from me, and after our second meeting with a marriage counselor last week, she finally admitted the truth. She admitted what I had suspected and feared but deeply hoped hadn't happened. She had indeed slept with C that night in July, and even though she said she had felt bad afterward and shameful, she still kept talking to him via social media. She admitted to having met with him twice after that, but nothing more than a bit of kissing. She even tried to contact him again a few days after I had confronted her in August. My first response after that was simply freezing. I didn't yell or curse or anything. I didn't harm her in any way. I partly felt relieved that she had finally admitted what I suspected, but at the same time, I felt humiliated and hurt beyond anything I've ever felt before. I didn't want to rush to anything, so I haven't thrown the ring in her face yet, nor have I confronted the other guy as I don't want to be the person to rat on him to his wife or make myself get arrested for assault. Besides, it wasn't him that broke my marriage contract. It was my wife. I don't know what to believe anymore. The woman I thought I knew would never do something like this. She's been trying to convince me that she was an idiot and selfish and whatnot, and that she feels really bad about hurting me like that. She says she's ready to do anything to fix the situation and to get me to trust her again and feel like she's worthy again. Honestly, I don't know if I'll ever trust her again or see her with the same eyes. I do love her, of course, and I like to be around her and see her smile, but at the same time, it stings my heart. I want this to work because of the kids and our shitty financial situation, as we can't afford going through a divorce. But I fear that I will lose myself and never gain any self-respect if I go through with this. How the hell can I forgive her for cheating on me with not only one guy but 3? Well, for if you count that one time she kissed a random guy. She was both emotionally as well as physically cheating with all of them for some period of time, not just a one drunk night mistake, but some kind of emotional and sexual relationship with 3 guys for over 2 months. It doesn't matter if 2 of those relationships were online. She still planned to meet with them, knowing fully what would happen if they did. Has anyone here gone through anything similar to this and has some good advice? I know it's easy to say just divorce her, man, and move on, but it's not that simple. I still have feelings for her, and I don't know what will happen with our kids and our families. I also fear that if I divorce her, which will mean that her family and friends will know the truth, that she will harm herself or at least be in a mental state where she will have a bad influence on our kids. We also have an unfinished house and no savings and need at least to finish fixing it in order to get any cash out of selling it. Update. But after getting lots of great comments from you guys as well as talking with my closest friends, I got enough encouragement to gain some faith in myself. I finally opened my eyes to what I had thought deep down, that there was no chance in hell that I would ever going to get over what my wife did. So I decided last Thursday to tell her I wanted to end this marriage. I think she knew it was coming, as she didn't seem that surprised. She didn't even try to persuade me or anything. Just went like a broken record. Nothing I say will change anything. Whenever I asked her to say anything, there was lots of crying, and she called in sick to work. We have since then been telling our closest friends and family about the incoming divorce, but she has been incredibly hesitant to admit what she did to her parents. My mother knows everything, but I, for some reason, agreed to not tell the in-laws about what happened yet. Maybe I'm afraid of a war between my soon-to-be ex-wife and me, so I agreed to give her time to tell them. When we met them last Sunday, we told them about the divorce, but as we had to leave 2 of our kids with them for 3 days due to school holiday, it didn't feel like the right time to come clean about their daughter's multiple affairs. Instead, we told them that there was some unsolvable disagreement, which felt really bad for me to say because they seemed so disappointed. They have been part of my family for almost 17 years, and I care about them, and they have been really supportive to us through the years, both financially, and they love spending time with our kids. I felt really bad about lying to them, but I'm afraid that if I go and spill the beans, my soon-to-be ex-wife will become hostile and make the divorce process that much harder. But my patience is not limitless. I will tell them eventually if my wife doesn't come clean soon. I don't want the real reasons for the divorce to go public either, as we live in a small society, and the truth would eventually find its way to my kids, and they might get picked on because of it. I'd rather for the truth to remain with our closest friends and family, while the official explanation would be that we divorced due to growing apart, wanting different things, etc. I also don't want to be known as the poor guy who had his wife porked by another guy. Now there are some big loose ends to tie. We need to sell our house and find apartments for ourselves. The custody will be shared, where I will have the kids for a week and their mother for the other week. I also feel like their legal address should be with me, so I won't have to pay her child support. It would be unfair after what she did. I have no idea how this will end, but often in my country, the mother tends to get what she wants, as everyone always feels sorry for them. I will fight for my kids, though. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Mill leaves me with a ridiculous chore list before going on vacation, so I burn it and make a long overdue call that changes everything. I, 29F, have been married to my husband, 32M, for 5 years. My husband took up a project in Europe about a year ago and is supposed to stay there for 3 more years to work on the project. So he's been away, and I've been at home with our 3-year-old son. We were supposed to move with him, but my mother-in-law forced him to leave us behind and go on his own. She believed that it wouldn't be good for our son to move so frequently. 3 years here and then the next 3 years in Europe and then back here. After a lot of contemplating, my husband and I decided that my mother-in-law was right, so I remained here with my son. She also convinced me to move in with her so that we could all live together as a family, and I agreed to it readily. Since then, I wouldn't even have to pay for daycare or a nanny when I'd go off to work. My mother-in-law would take care of my son for me. It was a win-win situation for all of us, and we agreed to it readily. I'd always been on good terms with my in-laws, so I didn't think there was anything off or weird about this. Around a year back, I moved in with my in-laws a couple of weeks after my husband left. It was all very nice during the first few weeks, but slowly my mother-in-law started changing her behavior. She started making me do all the chores around the house. Cooking, cleaning, laundry, and whatnot because they were too old. I didn't notice it initially, and by the time I did, it was too late. She'd started treating me like a housemate and would make me do all the chores around the house. If I said that I was too tired, then she'd start taunting me and the way I was raised to be lazy and spoiled. We got into a lot of fights, but after a while, she'd apologize to me with tears, and I'd end up forgiving her time and again. Whenever my husband would visit, the entire family would be on their best behavior for obvious reasons. I mean, they can't mistreat me when he's around because they rely on him to fund them because my in-laws don't earn enough and desperately need my husband to keep sending them money. My father-in-law and mother-in-law are both retired, and my sister-in-law is in college, so my husband and I are the only earning members of the family. My own parents aren't anymore. My dad passed away when I was 10, and I lost my mother 6 years back. Had they been around still, I would have moved out immediately to stay with them instead of in this hellhole, but my hands were tied. I couldn't tell my husband about the way his parents were treating me either because I was scared of what would happen next. It sounds stupid because I'm an adult working woman. One call to my husband would have solved all my problems, but I still couldn't bring myself to do it. Even after almost a whole year of being treated like crap by my in-laws, I really did like my in-laws and they've been kind to me for a really long time before this mistreatment started, and I just kept hoping that somehow someday they'd go back to treating me well, but that didn't happen. 3 days back, I finally realized that my in-laws were never going to change, and all the times that they apologized to me was just for show, to pacify me and make sure that I didn't tell my husband anything. My in-laws have a family tradition of going on holiday for a week or so every year, and ever since I'd started dating my husband, I was included in those trips as well. But this year, since my husband wouldn't be able to make it, I decided to stay back and get some much-needed time away from my in-laws. I'd heard my mother-in-law and father-in-law planning to leave from now, but they hadn't asked me anything, so I decided that whenever they did speak to me about it, I'd tell them that I wanted to stay back. A few days ago, my mother-in-law finally brought it up with me. However, even before I could communicate my decision to them, my mother-in-law handed me a list of chores that needed to be done by the time they returned. I was dumbstruck while I was reading through the list and barely even listened to whatever my mother-in-law was saying, explaining that she wanted me to do all of this while they were on vacation. I was reeling from what she just said to me anyway, but I totally lost it when I read clean both. I just snapped and screamed at her for the next 10 minutes about how she was a disgustingly entitled old hag and I was going to do none of this. I grabbed the list, stomped off to the kitchen in a fit of rage, and set fire to the list while my mother-in-law tried to argue with me. Then I did what I should have done a long time ago. I grabbed my phone and made the call to my husband that had been long overdue. Right in front of my mother-in-law, I told him everything that I'd been holding back for so long. My mother-in-law kept screaming in the background about how I was lying and it was just a really chaotic phone call in general, but my husband managed to calm me down and told me that he would take the next flight back home to deal with this. He said that he was scheduled to come back in a few days anyway, but he was going to make it earlier to fix whatever was happening at home. Until then, he advised me to take our son and go to the nearest hotel, so that's what I did. My mother-in-law kept screaming and sobbing while I packed my son's and my own clothes up, but I ignored all of it and left with my son. I couldn't forgive them anymore because they'd proven time and again that they weren't sorry at all. I've been living in the hotel with my son for the past 3 days. My husband is supposed to arrive tomorrow, and we're waiting for him to come back so he can sort this whole thing out. Not because I depend on him, but because I can't do everything all at once since I'm all on my own right now, and I need to look after my son as well, who's confused by the change in scenario. A few hours ago, I finally received the first message after I left from my mother-in-law. It was a text saying that she was sorry about the way she treated me, and she'd finally realized that I must have taken it the wrong way. She told me that she just assumed that I wouldn't be interested in coming along since my husband wasn't here, and so she gave me that list because she'd assumed that I'd be at home, and since I wouldn't be that busy, I could get all the work done by the time they'd be back. She admitted that she had been too quick to assume, and that must have rubbed me the wrong way, and she sincerely apologized for it. Then she told me that I overreacted the other day, and so did she. She wanted me to let bygones be bygones and forget all about it so that we could start afresh. She even added that she considered me no less than her own daughter, and this colossal misunderstanding was hurting her as well, probably even more than it was hurting me, and she really wanted me to come back. I'd reacted the way I did the other day. Update 1. Okay. Hey. So my husband came back a few days ago, and things have been really stressful since then. He drove straight to the hotel from the airport to visit me first and talk to me about what had happened. I explained it all to him and even showed him the text that his mother had sent me a few days ago. But I hadn't responded to it because I knew she was just bluffing in order to pacify me yet again, so that I wouldn't make the situation with her son even worse. But I didn't buy it and saw right through her, so I didn't respond to the text either. Besides, all the messages and comments here advised me against responding to her as well, so I think I did the right thing. My husband is furious with his family and has decided to cut them out of his life entirely. And that's a decision I can get behind. It's harsh, but it's nothing short of what they deserve, because the past year has been a total nightmare for me. I wish I could be the bigger person and let this go, but I can't and I won't. I kept silent about this for a really long time because somewhere deep down I'd received a lot of love and affection from these very same people in the past, and I'd hoped that they would change for the better eventually, but they didn't and kept disappointing me with their cruel behavior and fake apologies repeatedly. And yeah, maybe I missed my own parents, so in a way I'd started considering my in-laws my family, but they didn't deserve any of the love that I'd shown them and definitely not the forgiveness. All the love that they'd shown me in the past when I lived with my husband was for their daughter-in-law and not me as a person, and I was wrong to ever believe that they actually cared about me as an individual. They did care about my son, but that was because he was his father's son as well. It had nothing to do with me. It sucks, but at least now I'm not delusional enough to believe that things would ever get better and have decided to sever all ties with this family. I know where I stand now. My husband and I are now planning to leave for Europe within the next week with our son, and do what we were supposed to do according to our original plan. Our son might find it a little difficult to adjust to the change, but he's young. He'll deal with it and get over it soon. I just don't want to stay away from my husband any longer, and neither does he. He can't quit his job because it's really lucrative and pays well, but I have no qualms about quitting my job and moving with him. I don't care, to be honest. I don't have any family here, and the ones I did consider to be my family turned out to be the worst people I'd ever met. So screw them. I'm an accountant, so I'm sure I'll find a job there too. If not, then I'll be a som, but I just don't see the point of living separately anymore, and neither does my husband. He hasn't told his family about our decision to make the move and cut ties with them, but we're going to their house tomorrow to pack all our clothes and belongings for the move. Tomorrow will hopefully be the last time I have to see them for a while. I'm nervous to meet them again, but I have to rip this Band-Aid off and I have to do it soon. My in-laws don't deserve to be in touch with me or my husband or my son. Update 2. Okay, so my husband and I are back at the hotel. It was a really hectic day for us today since we went back to his parents' house to collect our things. I left my son at a close friend's place because I knew there would be a lot of drama today, and I didn't want him to see that. I wish I could say I was proven wrong, but I wasn't. As soon as my husband and I entered the house, my mother-in-law, who had let me in, decided to start acting venomously sweet, and it almost made me barf. This was the same way she'd acted with me during the first 4 years of my marriage. That is, before I moved in and she revealed her true colors. Even my father-in-law and sister-in-law were on their best behavior, and it wasn't surprising because all they could see was a bunch of dollars and a maid walking in through the door when my husband and I came by. That's what they really saw us as. But we weren't falling for this little happy family act anymore. They'd had the chance to play happy family with us earlier, but they blew it, and now there are no more chances for them. My husband was very straightforward and blunt with them and told them that we were just here to collect the things that we'd left behind the other day and then we'd be out of there. Not just their home but also out of their lives, because the way they'd been treating me in his absence was disrespectful and absolutely unacceptable, so it was necessary for him to cut them out of his life. There was instant uproar when he said this, and then several accusations were hurled, mostly at me. My husband was labeled ungrateful and arrogant and spineless for allowing me to turn him against his own family, and I was called lazy, selfish, and immoral for trying to break up their family on purpose so that I could hog all my husband's attention and money. There was a lot of screaming and shouting, and my voice is actually hoarse right now, but at least I got it all out of my system. All the anger that I've been suppressing for the last 1 year just bubbled over today, and by the time we were leaving, my mother-in-law was in tears and was still mumbling about how I'd ruined her life and was now stealing her son from her. My husband seemed very upset, but that was quite natural since he just had to put his own family through something so emotionally taxing just for the sake of the family he chose for himself, his wife, and his son. My husband has been quiet ever since we came back, and I'm kind of scared of what he might say. I'm hoping he doesn't go soft and say that he wants to give his family a second chance or something of the sort, because I really wouldn't be able to take that. I think I might leave if he does say that, so I'm really keeping my fingers crossed right now. Update 3. It's been a week since my husband came back, and we've been living in the hotel for a while now. Our flight to Europe is in 4 days, and today my mother-in-law got in touch with my husband again to apologize for her behavior the other day. This is just her routine now. Screw up, blame other people for it, and then apologize and expect all to be forgiven. It must have worked for me, but my husband isn't stupid. We had a lengthy discussion about how he was feeling about the fight we had the other day since he looked very upset, and he told me that he wasn't upset that he was fighting with his family, but he was upset because he felt like he'd failed to protect his wife and son from something so emotionally torturous. He told me that even though he'd felt a little bad about confronting his parents and saying all that about cutting them off to them, that stopped as soon as they started yelling at me, and he realized what I must have been going through for the past year. He felt like he'd been a total failure as a husband and a father because he'd allowed his family to treat me like crap and had been so oblivious to the truth as well. That conversation just made me realize that I'd married the right man, because while I'd been worrying that he would go back to his family, here he was thinking about nothing else but me. I felt guilty for even thinking that he'd forgive his family, but I think my feelings were just all over the place at the time, and I was feeling kind of paranoid and anxious because of what had happened. But then we talked, and he put an end to all my worries, and I tried my best to do the same for him. I told him that this wasn't his fault and it had just been a huge misunderstanding. I'd just been too scared myself to stand up against his family and was confused because of all the gaslighting and emotional manipulation, which is why I stayed silent and put up with their behavior for so long, and that was absolutely not on him. I was the one putting them on a pedestal. They'd also been really kind to me before I moved in with them and whenever he was around, so we couldn't exactly blame anyone for how the situation turned out. We led ourselves to believe that they were good, decent, and loving people and would be our safe space for when my husband wouldn't be around. But clearly that was not the case, and this was nobody else's fault but his parents. They were the bad guys here, not him, and I knew he was nothing like them, so he had nothing to worry about. That made him feel better, and so when his mother reached out to him with her fake apology crap yet again, we were in no mood to take that. We could have blocked her instantly, but we chose to let her know once and for all that we were genuinely not interested in repairing the relationship. What she'd done couldn't be fixed with just a flimsy apology. After sending that message, we finally blocked her. It's been a few hours since then, and my sister-in-law has been calling my husband non-stop. However, she can. She was probably the least selfish of the three. It wouldn't bother me, but she wouldn't stop her mother either, and she definitely never spoke up for me. Neither did she ever offer to lend me a helping hand either, and was just as complicit. But my husband was the one who paid half of her college tuition, and she still had 1 semester to go, so that's probably what she was worried about the most now. After a while, my husband answered the call and told her that while he'd still send her money for her to complete her education, that was it. After that, she'd be on her own, and he's also not going to be sending any money to his parents after this, so they can kiss their annual vacations goodbye, I guess. His sister tried to argue with him, but he silenced her by saying that if she messed with him anymore, then he would cut off her college fund as well, and then she'd actually be screwed, so she had better watch her tongue. I think she must have said something about me because he kind of flared up at that. After a few more minutes of bickering, he finally hung up on her, and right now he's taking a nap with our son beside him. It's been really, really stressful for all of us, but I'm happy that we're going through it together as a family. I know he must have had his own struggles when he was living by himself as well, and while they might not have been as bad as what I was going through here, it still must have been hard to be on your own. I know it was hard for me. I regret ever letting my mother-in-law sweet-talk us into separating in the first place. I bet that's what she wanted me to stay here anyway so that she'd have someone to do all the household chores because she didn't want to and she couldn't make her daughter do it, so I did it. Never mind that I had a full-time job as well and would be dog-tired after coming back home, and never mind that I also had a 3-year-old toddler to look after as well. Just makes me wonder how self-centered and cruel people can be. She would have hired a maid to do all the work around the house and clean up after them, but she wanted to save money so she could blow it all on extravagant vacations. Well, she can have her damn vacation now. I'd like to see that as well. Update 4. Hi everyone. My flight is tomorrow, and we're all packed and ready to go. As for my husband's family, I found out last night from a cousin of his that my mother-in-law had been talking crap about me on Facebook and bad-mouthing her own son like nobody's business. She'd accused us of being selfish, using her and her husband as free babysitters for when we needed to go out for work, and left her at home alone with her grandson for hours without bothering to check up on him. Basically painting us as bad parents and herself as a poor lady forced to work even at this age. Not only that, but she's been saying all sorts of crap about my husband's relatives. Like, apparently, I tyrannized them while I was living at their place and made her and her college-going daughter do all the work. She just flipped the narrative and made it sound like I was the one doing whatever she'd actually been guilty of all along. It was amazing that someone could go so low just because they've been denied monetary help simply because of their own disgusting behavior, and I don't know how exactly this was supposed to help her case in my husband's eyes. Like, he's cutting her off because she'd been treating me badly, and her response to that was to start creating even more drama and inviting even more trouble. If she wants my husband to pay her any mind at all, this is definitely not the way to go about it because, if anything, this just made matters worse. His relatives have been calling him left and right. Some to berate him, some to console him, but mostly to find out the truth. The ones who are trying to guilt-trip us and believing my mother-in-law's side of the story can continue to believe her, but my husband was thankful for the ones who bothered to find out what was going on. We've put up our side online as well to clear it up once and for all. Now people can choose whatever they want to believe, and we're going to be just fine with it because we're going away for a long time and won't be back anytime soon. My husband is going to try and get his posting extended for a couple more years, so soon enough we'll be far away from all of this, and none of this drama will have any meaning anymore. I'm excited for what the future holds, and I hope it's just good energy for my family and me. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Caught my wife cheating on me with multiple guys after she got a promotion, so I took revenge by collecting proofs, getting her fired, taking the house, and finally filing for divorce. I, 45M, have been married to my wife, 42F, for about 18 years now. She works in marketing at the regional branch of a pretty well-known company, and I work in a senior role at a software company. We have both been relatively career-focused go-getters, and I think that's part of what drew us to one another. You likely won't be surprised to hear that we don't have any children, but we've never really felt like we really wanted any, and I personally don't think anyone should take the decision to have kids lightly. In a marriage as long as ours, we've never had any issues regarding unfaithfulness, which is something that I have always been thankful for. I've always felt like we've been too busy climbing the ladder to be fooling around. That is likely a stupid assumption because I know that anyone who wants to cheat can make time for it if they really want to, but there simply wasn't any reason for me to suspect her of infidelity, and I used that notion to buttress my belief. The worst part is that, until it happened, I didn't even know better. There were literally no signs, as far as I know. Maybe if I paid more attention, I would have seen it, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The entire thing started when my wife got a promotion at work about a year ago. She works extremely hard and has worked at her specific company for over a decade. She came back one day to tell me that she got a major promotion and was now in an executive position at the company. This was huge because, as I've said, we have always been very career-focused, and there were signs that she was going to be chosen for the promotion, but we simply weren't sure, so it was huge when it was confirmed. The position came with new responsibilities, but it also came with a massive pay increase, which was, of course, one of the best parts of the thing. Now, for the most part, nothing really changed. She was keeping slightly later nights, though nothing too crazy, and if you're a top marketing executive at a company, it doesn't seem surprising that your hours might be a bit longer, at least in the initial period as you get acclimated to the role. There were days when she'd get back early, which was nice, but for the most part, instead of getting back around 6 p.m., like she used to, it'd be 7:30 or 8 o'clock. I told her to take things easy every once in a while, but we are both workaholics, so I knew my words wouldn't change too much. It was about 2 weeks ago that things changed quite a lot. It started with a message that somebody sent me on LinkedIn, and I'm always ready to answer messages there because it's all about business for me. The message was simply a greeting, though, and I checked the person's profile before I responded. They worked at the same company that my wife did, though their role was clearly junior. It was a lady, so I'll just say that her name was Suzette. I responded to her with a similar greeting, knowing that she'd eventually come out about what she wanted, but it wasn't until the next day, after work hours, before she actually replied. She asked me if I was my wife's husband, and I told her that I was. At that point, I knew that it had nothing whatsoever to do with business, and my first thought was this was some pathetic girl trying to poach a married man or something. I mean, I really couldn't come up with another reason why someone like her was messaging me and leading with a question like that. I answered in the affirmative, though. I would really like to talk to you about something private, but I don't know if you're open. It's about your wife, was added in a separate message. At that point, I started to feel very anxious. I thought that something might have been wrong with my wife, where she might have had an accident, but this message was sent since yesterday, so it was definitely something else. I started to wonder whether my wife was too combative and bossy at work and was essentially a bully to some extent. That was eventually what I settled on. She must want to report my wife to me, perhaps before trying to report her to HR. So I told her that I was open to hearing what she had to say. She proposed meeting in person at a neutral spot, but I really didn't feel comfortable with that, so I told her to say what she wanted to say right there. I needed to have written proof of whatever it was she had to say. She seemed hesitant but eventually agreed. She sent me a paragraph, and it was very shocking to read. I don't know if you're the kind of person who prefers ignorance or whether you would want to know, but I know with certainty that your wife is sleeping with some of the junior employees. Maybe you both have an arrangement, and if so, please forgive me for intruding, but I think that it wouldn't be fair for you to be in the dark about this. I really beg that you don't mention my name if you do decide to confront her. I know this could cost me my job, but I am really just trying to do the right thing, and I hope that you can appreciate that. I read that message over about 5 times before what it was saying actually started to sink into my head. She was saying that my wife was sleeping with junior coworkers. Was that something I could even believe? I hadn't seen a single sign of that. She never seemed to smell like anyone's perfume. She never acted even mildly different when she'd returned from work. To be honest, the only thing that I could point to was her coming home later than she used to, and that certainly could align with this new theory. It took me quite some time before I replied to her. I told her that I was grateful that she told me and that her admission was going to be safe with me. About 10 minutes later, a bunch of questions started jumping into my head. How many employees? When did this start? Did they do these things at work? How did she even know about it? I asked her every single one of these questions in a single message. I don't know for sure, but I know at least 2 because I overheard them talking about it. That's how I found out. And maybe it was some kind of inside joke, but they sounded serious and they tend to work late nights. I assumed they might be doing things in the building, but I don't have an answer for that. I heard their conversation about 2 months ago, and it's been eating me up. I saw her whispering to one of these guys somewhere discreet, and that's what brought it back to the forefront of my mind. I just had to say something, and I'm sorry. Sorry that it took me so long, too. I report directly to her, so I feel like a traitor. I don't hate her or dislike her, but it just wasn't right. Honestly, most of me believed this lady, but I couldn't understand why. Maybe because it just seemed so improbable that someone would go to those lengths to lie to me. Could this be some workplace rival trying to ruin her family life? Couldn't know. And because I personally hadn't even had an inkling of a doubt in my wife, part of me didn't want to believe it, but for some reason it seemed credible. I thanked the lady quite extensively, and I told her I would act on the information as I thought appropriate, but she would be left out of it. I wanted to tell my wife about it and see her reaction or simply confront her, but it was going to be so easy for her to deny it. It was clear as day that my best choice was to see what I could dig up. That way, I'd either be able to feel like there was no evidence and debunk what the lady told me, or I'd find something to corroborate it, and then I'd take things from there. So I decided to be patient and get a good opportunity to do my snooping. When my wife came home that night, things were normal, and I did my best to act as normal as possible with her. It wasn't too hard because I wasn't entirely convinced. My chance to snoop around came about 4 days later when my wife went to the salon to get her hair done. She almost always went around with her laptop, but in this case, she didn't. Her password isn't a secret to me, so I was able to log right in, and since she uses a MacBook, I was able to take a look at her messages. Based on what the lady had told me, I was looking for conversations that seemed to be with younger men who were employees of hers. I could hardly recognize any of the names, though, so I decided to simply go through as many of those messages as possible. I saw a preview of a message with the text, "I'll call you when I get back," so I opened it up and started to go through the entire thing. Apparently, she had saved the contact, which belonged to some guy called John, as DoorDash to make things less suspicious if I just happened to see a message from him pop up at that moment. I was absolutely furious, and by the time I got to the point where they were sending steamy texts back and forth, I almost lost my mind. He had sent her pictures. She hadn't sent him any, and she responded very positively to his. At one point, I realized that I had been staring blankly at the screen for a few minutes. Honestly, it's hard for me to express how heartbreaking it was to discover that. I decided to leave the chat, but I made sure to keep as much as I could record as evidence. After that, I went back to the chat to continue scrolling through and looking for other people that she was having affairs with. I'm not going to bore you all, but there were 2 other employees. I could tell they were employees because work was mentioned in like 5% of all the messages, while the rest was just explicit stuff, and judging by their images, none of these men could have been over the age of 30. That was making things a lot worse in my head. I took all the evidence that I could get, and honestly, I'm quite baffled on what to do next. Is it as easy as just confronting her and then going for a divorce? Is that really all that I'm going to do? This is a woman who comes home every day, kisses and hugs me, and acts like there's absolutely nothing that's wrong. We've slept together several times since her affairs started, and now I know that it is an absolute priority that I get tested. I'm going to do that, but I want to figure something out, and I need opinions on it. Should I just leave it at divorce, or should I hit her harder than that? Should I find a way to really hurt her because this is the worst form of betrayal, and I genuinely can't stomach her anymore? Edit. I'm just finishing a long day of work, and I appreciate all of the advice and comments that I've received regarding my predicament. Someone said that I only have one chance to get back at her because once I've divorced her and left those years behind, I won't be able to act on my pain. I know this isn't something that I'll stop feeling anytime soon, so I'm ready to make sure I use this chance to get back. I'm not going to stoop to the level of cheating back. I don't even have the urge to do that. I'll figure something out, though, and I will update you all when I get to that point. Update. Hey everyone, I wrote an earlier post about my wife who was promoted and started cheating on me with her junior employees, about 3 of them that I know about. It's been several months since then, and to be honest, I forgot about updating you all in the midst of all the drama in my life, but now that things are over, trust me, it came to mind and I'm here to tell you all how things played out. It's all good news. So when I finally decided that I was going to confront my wife about the entire thing, I made sure to go and get an STD test done first. They found gonorrhea. Fortunately, I was asymptomatic and I was given a prescription to get it treated. I was super pissed off though, because she's the only woman I have slept with since we got married. So I certainly didn't get it from anyone but her, and she likely got it from one of her new sexual partners. It was at that point that I was certain that I was going to confront her. When she arrived at home that night, I was in the living room, and I asked her to sit down before she could even take off her coat. She seemed concerned, but I don't think she knew exactly what was going on at that point. "I know that you've been cheating on me," was exactly how I said it to her, and I watched as she deflated and held her face in her hands. I mentioned the names of the people she was cheating on me with, at least the ones I had confirmed. I basically told her everything I knew, though I didn't tell her how I found out. "One of your boyfriends gave you gonorrhea, which you gave to me, too." I remember holding up the test in front of her face, and she peeked at it before hiding her face again. Honestly, it was pissing me off. I sat there waiting for her to say something. She wasn't crying, and I knew she had heard everything I said. It took about 3 minutes before she looked up and shook her head and said, "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." The way she said it would have worked if she had scratched my dream car, but not for cheating on me with multiple men. I don't even have any excuse. I can't defend myself. I thought you would never find out. I don't even know how you found out. Right now, I hate myself for doing this to you. I'm so sorry." Towards the end, her voice started to quiver, but genuinely, it didn't mean very much to me. I could see she was crying at this point, but she wasn't sobbing or anything. It didn't move me. "You're not sleeping here tonight. Find somewhere else. I'm going to be looking for a divorce lawyer first thing in the morning, and I suggest you do too, so we can make this fast." It was only at this point that she said the only thing remotely close to begging. "Baby, we've been together for nearly 20 years. Can't we?" And then she trailed off. I think she wanted to ask if we could work things out, but I think she recognized it wasn't possible considering how deep her transgressions were. In response, I only told her that I'd wait in the living room while she packed any of the things she'd need for the next week. We'd arrange for her to get more of her stuff later. She stood up and went to the bedroom after that, and that was all that was made of our confrontation. Probably the most mature way to react to a breakup of that magnitude. She eventually left the house, and the next phase was the divorce stage. We both got lawyers. The papers were served and signed very quickly, and we eventually got into the proceedings. Fortunately for me, I had all the evidence of her infidelity, including my STD test, and it was presented in a very effective way by my divorce lawyer, who was a total rock star. Things went on for quite a bit but ultimately ended in my favor because my ex-wife's promotion meant that she started earning significantly more than me, and I ended up getting a pretty nice alimony judgment even though I really do not need it. I'll use it to pay for a hobby or two. When it comes to the house, it was a tough one because we co-owned it, but her higher income meant she'd be better set to find a new residence. I got that one too. We each had cars and she kept hers naturally, but there was no way for me to get that from her. As things went, that was how we finally split ways for good, and I was very happy with what I got. I wasn't done, though. I really wanted to go after her affair partners, but after really thinking about it, I decided not to. These people were employees, and it was hard to be sure that they weren't coerced into it at the start, regardless of how much they seemed to be enjoying it later on. She took advantage of them as their boss, and I decided it was too messy and not worth the effort to go after them. However, regarding her, it was easy for me to make a report to HR at her company from an anonymous address. I had to let them know that one of their top-level executives was coercing junior employees into sleeping with her, and I recommended they start an investigation. That happened, and long story short, she was found to be guilty of the allegations. Several junior employees directly beneath her were questioned, and there seemed to be a fourth person that I never found out about. The lady who had exposed the affairs to me in the first place was feeding me inside updates because all I got officially was an email telling me an investigation was commencing and an investigation had been completed. Her punishment: she lost her job. I know it won't be too hard for her to find a new job based on merit, but with sexual misconduct allegations following her around, she's not going to have an easy time. As far as I know, she's still searching up until now. And yes, I know it jeopardizes my alimony, but I really didn't need it to survive. Plus, she's got more than enough money in the bank to still fulfill the payments. If she doesn't, I don't mind going to court for her to figure it out somehow. That's not my problem. We've probably spoken twice since the divorce, and it was all about formalities relating to splitting our lives up for good. I personally don't want to ever have to talk to her again. In the way things are going, I probably won't need to. Honestly, life is good as it is, and although revenge doesn't completely erase the pain of being cheated on by your longtime wife, it does a hell of a good job at it. Feels good, and I'm glad I went through with it. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Found out I had a teenage daughter from a one-night stand and took her in. We bonded for 3 years, but now her other dad, who abandoned her, wants to apologize. In November of 2019, I, 42M, was playing a game with my wife, 42F, and our kids, 9M and 4M, when I got a knock on my door. When I opened it, there were 2 officers and a shy girl who I will call Jane, now 19F. I let them in, and the cops explained that Jane was my biological daughter. I had no idea of this, but they brought me a DNA test. Then it all made sense. For some backstory, I had a one-night stand 20 years ago with a random woman I met at a party. The woman was actually married, and her husband, who I'll call Steve, found out Jane wasn't his after Jane took a 23andMe test as a small gift from one of her friends. When Steve found out about this, he immediately blew up at Jane and the mom and kicked them both out of the house during the divorce process. He told Jane that she was a lie. He would never be her father ever again, and he never wants to see her ever again. Jane cried and begged for him because she only ever knew of him as her father. But Steve took his name off the birth certificate and went NC. When I asked why she isn't staying with her bio mom, they told me that the mom fell into a depression and started taking drugs. She became verbally and physically abusive until an accident a week ago that caused her to be taken away by CPS. I agreed to let her in, and Jane brought her bags into the house. This was obviously very unstable. For a while, Jane was shy around us. She didn't talk a lot. My wife and I were welcoming to her as much as we could. Our oldest son, Alex, immediately started loving Jane and tried to spend time with her. He always wanted a sister and spent a lot of time with Jane. Our younger son, Tony, was a newborn when she arrived, so he just grew up with her and loved her naturally. Over time, Jane started becoming more open with us. We got closer and closer, and in December 2020, when the family was having a movie night, Jane kissed me on the cheek and said, "I love you, Dad." We all cried except me. LOL of happiness. My daughter is now a beautiful 19-year-old lady in college, and it's like we already raised her for the 19 years of her life. Now, to the problem. I got a random message a week ago from someone I didn't recognize. When I opened it, I realized that Steve had sent the message. It was pretty long, so I'll just reword it here. "Hello, my name is... I want to talk to you about Jane. When I found out she wasn't mine, my world shattered. I kicked her out because I couldn't bear to see her after the love of my life had betrayed me in such a devastating way. I know you had no fault in this, but it still hurts. Over the last year, I've realized my daughter will always be my daughter, and nothing can change that. I want to reach out to you so I can apologize to her. Please let me see her again." At first, I wanted to tell Jane, but then I remembered a conversation about 7 months ago. My oldest son asked about Jane's other father, Steve, and I overheard Jane say something like, "Oh, you mean ex-father?" He doesn't realize the damage he had done to me, and it took so long to recover. I have confided in only my wife about this, and she told me to just leave the message be and ignore it. So now I'm stuck with 3 outcomes. 1. Tell Jane about the message and raise hellfire again. 2. Respond to it myself and see how it goes. 3. Just ignore the message and let our life continue as normal. I'm not completely sure what to do. Edit. Forgot to mention that my daughter still lives at home since the college isn't far away, and she wants to save money, just in case that's important. Also, she was more open to us about Steve as time went on, and she claims to have no love or respect for him anymore. Now for some comments. Did Jane ever get therapy for this abandonment? I can appreciate that she said ex-father and all, but most children, even if abused or abandoned, desperately want a connection with their parent. They may talk a big game, but it's a protective mechanism. As an example, I went no contact with my father in my teens and didn't reconnect until I was in my early 30s. I spent a lot of time in therapy in my 20s regarding the abuse I suffered as a kid from both parents, but that didn't make me not want them. I get that my story is anecdotal, but you can hit up any family therapist, and they could give you a lot of similar stories. I 45F think you should leave it up to Jane. Show her the message and tell her that you will support her in whatever she chooses, and nothing will change for you if she wants to see where this goes. Is Steve a jerk who royally messed up? Yes, but he's human, and had he not messed up, you'd likely not have your daughter in your life in this capacity. If she were 10, I'd likely tell Steve he can take it up when she's an adult, but she is 19 and is an adult, so I would not take away the opportunity for her to choose for herself. If you do and she finds out later, you'll be the bad guy. The police highly recommended I get therapy for Jane after the long legal part of me officially becoming a guardian for her. We got 2 therapy classes. One individually for Jane and one for the family on how to adjust. We spent 2 years in each. Professor Plum did it. Jane is an adult and deserves the respect of being told information that regards her to allow her to make her own decisions. I get that you want to protect her from more pain, but a large part of the trauma she experienced was due to being powerless and having no control or choice over her own life. Her mother started the entire mess by withholding information. Jane needs you to not hide things from her or make choices for her. She needs to know that you will always be completely honest with her and allow her to make choices for herself. Anonymous Octopus agrees with this. Let her know you're not telling her to hurt her or open old wounds or encourage her one way or another. Let her know that you are telling her because you love and respect her and you want to give her the opportunity to ask for advice and make her own decision. Itchiness. Be open and honest and let her make the decision. Tell her that you'll support her no matter what, but make sure to tell her and let her make the decision. Update. A lot of you told me I should come clean to Jane, so I did just that. I sat her down after work the day after I posted, and we had a long talk. When I said that Steve had messaged me, Jane got furious and demanded to see the message. She wanted to spill her guts out to him. I tried calming her down, and she started crying. She said she still thought of him as a dad when the news came out and was scared that he would get rid of her. That she began having a hard time trusting people because of what happened. She hugged me and kissed me on the neck a lot, and I told her that if she wants to respond to the message, she can tell me. She said she would think about it. Some days passed by, and Jane tells me that she has what she wanted to say on paper. I took her sheet and went to Steve's contact and typed, "Hello, Steve. Jane has decided to write you a message herself and send it to you. I have attached it below. So keep in mind that I am not controlling what she says, and I won't force her into anything she doesn't want to do." I then attached a picture of the letter Jane wrote. The letter was basically her explaining in detail everything she feels, and she wants nothing to do with him anymore because she isn't his daughter anymore. I closed the chat with Steve, so I don't know if he read it, but I hope he did. I think this should be the last update. I did see one rule on this subreddit that only one update is allowed. If anything else major happens, I'll post it somewhere else. Maybe you could check my profile, but I don't think it will go further than this. Jane, me, and our family spent the night together. Some people asked me to elaborate on the specifics of how Jane got shuffled into my house in the first place, so I'll explain some details. I don't know the full story of Steve's divorce, but I do know that he relinquished all parental rights to Jane. The part where he said he's removing his name from the birth certificate was an obscenity he yelled during the confrontation, but it was never actually removed. When the bio mom became abusive, a neighbor called the cops one night, and Jane was placed into foster care. The 23andMe test she took was evidence on how to find me, and Jane was actually the one who suggested finding me so she could at least know who I was. This is all information I got from the people who brought Jane here, so sorry if it appears off. I did ask some more questions about how I was found, but they couldn't fully reveal. So that's all that happened. Thanks for everyone who gave advice. Now for some comments. Forsaken adds 9,599. Just so you know, you can post on your user thread if any update is coming. It's also a good way to keep the text when a post happens to break a rule and get removed. I think Steve is going to try again, possibly in the summer, more likely in later years. Guilt is a powerful feeling. Sometimes it's not easily gone. It will push him again into reaching her. Throw more Lost in Hell up. Thank you for suggesting the user thread to post. But Steve reached out to me via social media. Don't want to share specifics, and I closed the chat that he used to message me, so it's unlikely that he can find out any more information because we both were limited to one message until I accepted his friend request, which I didn't do. Now on to the next story. Story 7. I opened a store that affects a guy's monopoly, so he tried to bankrupt me with lawsuits. I am 26 years old, and I decided to open my own business this year. Moving forward in this post, I should point out that I am from a small town, 1,000 people in the rural Midwest. Because of this, everyone has some sort of connection with someone. We went to one of the liquor stores in the closest city, 30-ish minutes away. Small city, 8,000 people. When we were grabbing some alcohol for a party, I was looking at the prices and saw how insane the prices were for a six-pack of a local beer. We were charged $15. I was thinking about this and figured that I could probably make bank opening a liquor store. Back in February, I was furious about my shitty job and thinking out loud how cool it would be to own my own business to a friend. My friend's mom happened to be the president of the local bank. He told me, hey, with the pandemic, the bank has been struggling to find customers to give out loans right now. The bank is giving loans for cheap. A couple of weeks later, I went in and met with my friend's mom and pitched my idea, with research I had done on alcohol prices, potential demand, and estimated income. I got the loan at a fantastic interest rate. I bought a building, which happened to be the former bank, and hired my dad to help me renovate the building. My dad is a general contractor, and he gave me an excellent quote on materials and labor. After working everything out with the distributors, getting the proper licenses, and getting my paperwork I needed for the government, I was ready to open my liquor store in May. I had started taking out ads in the local newspaper, advertising my store and my prices. When I was in talks with my distributors, I learned that even with inflation and everything else, the liquor stores in the city had like an 80% markup. I talked to a local business owner and he suggested that I have around a 35% to 40% markup. Because of this, I was significantly cheaper than the closest liquor store and had a much wider selection than the gas stations and small local stores nearby. My hometown is near a national forest. As such, we have a ton of people who come up for weekends for recreational activities year-round. My first week, the week before Memorial Day weekend after opening, I had made a $4,000 profit. It was great being my own boss. If someone was rude to me or my girlfriend, "Oh, I'm sorry, you can do your business elsewhere." If someone tells my GF, "Go back to China," they can pay me 15% more at the register. Did the gang and I run out of alcohol? Time to grab my keys, not car keys, the store keys. My apartment is like 2 blocks away, and I go to the store. That's not to say that it wasn't difficult running my own business, especially since my only employee was my GF, and we were both working 60 to 12-hour days a week. I was both manager, accountant, and cashier, but it's so much nicer knowing I can tell someone to pound sand for being a prick. A couple of weeks after Memorial Day, some old guy walks into my store a couple of minutes after I opened. He seemed friendly enough, but eventually he offered to buy my store. I'm not going to say the amount, but it wouldn't have even covered my principal on the loan. I rejected the proposal outright and refused to negotiate. The sum he offered was low. He walked out of my store saying, "You'll be sorry you rejected that offer." The next month, a guy walked into my store and asked if I was the owner. After saying yes, I was informed that my business was being sued by this random guy I'd never heard of. After he left, I was freaking out and I decided that I was going to close early. When I got home, I Googled the guy and soon saw a picture of the guy that tried to buy my store. It turns out that that is the guy who owns both of the liquor stores in the nearby city. It also just so happens that he is on city council. With a little bit of further digging, I learned that this city has an ordinance that reads, "Any business institution that does not fulfill the definition of a restaurant, tavern, or liquor dispensary will be excluded from obtaining a license for the sale of alcohol." Later, I discovered that the same guy happens to be the head of the board which approves liquor licenses. I love small-town corruption. Either way, I had a major issue. My maternal uncle happens to be a lawyer in a neighboring state. I decided to call him and try to get some legal advice. I talked to him and read the documents that I had been handed, I was served over the phone, and the research I had done. After receiving all of the information I had read off, I was expecting to get some sort of advice, but instead heard, "Hang on, I've got to make a call," and he hung up. I'm freaking out. I was actually about to post my first post to r/legal advice. I'll be honest, I just wanted someone to tell me it was going to be okay and I didn't need to crawl to this guy on my hands and knees. As I was writing the title, my uncle called back, "Hey OP, I just got off the phone with my partner. He agreed that we can take your case pro bono if you would like to accept. We can discuss at my office tomorrow at 1 p.m. This is how I learned that my uncle is on the bar in 3 states. So we meet and we discuss the case. It turns out that the guy filed the libel suit against my business based on the ads I took out in the local newspapers. He claimed that my ads were targeted to damage his and his business's reputation. There were a few other things that I had no idea what was being referenced, but Uncle assured me that we would win this case, no problem. 3 weeks later, the case is dismissed. But after, my uncle says, people like that piece of work will likely try to file another suit against you. If that happens, call me and I promise I will help. The next day, I get served again, but this time I am the defendant, not my store. Me, I swear to God, I look at the documentation and the only thing that changed was instead of my business's name, mine is listed as the defendant. The same thing happens. For weeks later, the case is dismissed. Over the next 3 months, I was sued just as many times. Before the 5th case's hearing, we had a settlement meeting. My uncle, the judge, the guy suing me, his lawyer, a bailiff, and I were sitting in this room. The judge says, "You two have been in court 4 times already. Is there any way we could come to an agreement that'll stop this cycle of faulty litigation?" The guy's lawyer says they have an offer and handed it to my uncle, who then hands it to me. It essentially read that he'll stop all litigation if I sell my business for about 30% of my remaining loan principal. I outright rejected the offer and made a counteroffer. I said, "If you drop this case, I won't sue your ass for harassment." He busts out laughing. "Sue me with what money? The legal fees alone ought to have drained you. You should be happy I chose to extend this offer and not sue your ass into bankruptcy and buy that hole from the bank when they foreclose on your dumbass." The judge, the bailiff, and the guy's own lawyer were all looking at him aghast for saying the silent part out loud about the real reason I was getting sued. My uncle straight out said to him, "Oh, I am sorry. Apparently you were never told I have taken all of my nephew's cases pro bono. The only money he has spent on your litigations is gas. And bluntly, sir, I think your outburst has just spurred a suit against you." After that, we just left, and I was then informed a few days later the litigation was dropped. Right now, my uncle and I are talking about the future suit against the guy. I want to sue the guy for a very high amount to try and get press attention on this guy and his sketchy actions, although my uncle warned me that we'll need to be careful because if we set the damages too high, it'll look like we're just being vindictive. This won't be pro bono, but after getting sued 5 times for free, essentially, I'm not going to complain. Looking back on this, I am so thankful that my friends and family supported me the entire way, especially my uncle. Without my uncle, I would have absolutely lost my business. Now for some comments. Karen Diner, you're a very good writer. You might want to ask your uncle to have any future actions dismissed with prejudice and your opponent named as a vexatious litigant. That's how this kind of thing is usually handled, not in a suit for harassment. And claims for damages usually come in the form of a countersuit that is within the scope of the original litigation. That is by far the more economical option, and courts usually take a pretty dim view of original litigation that directly seeks to punish someone for filing lawsuits, which is a protected right under the U.S. Constitution and almost certainly under your state's constitution as well. Also, stay very close friends with your distributor. That's an easy way to cut your business off at the knees, especially if liquor licensing is handled at the local level. I'm really curious to know what state you are in. I always thought federal law required liquor licenses to be handled by the state. The local jurist is usually allowed oversight on issues like operating hours, etc. Your state also seems to have the most brutally efficient civil justice system I've ever heard of. Usually, the course of litigation you describe would take years, not a few months, even before courts got backed up so badly with COVID. Literally everything was dismissed in hearings before going to court by judges. I'm not exactly sure what the proper legal term is. Still, a couple of weeks of litigation can be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. Update. This is a follow-up to a post I made last year. I'll link it at the bottom if you are interested. But last year, I opened a liquor store with my GF, now fiancé, in my hometown. The nearby city had a few liquor stores run by a city councilman who controls who gets liquor licenses in said city. With me being 40 minutes away, he was losing business and offered to buy my store. I refused, and instead he tried to sue me for libel. His attempts, for around half a year, continued to sue me, my business, or anything else he could until it was thrown out with contempt. Fortunately, I was able to get my lawyer to take the case pro bono, so I didn't get buried in legal fees as the guy intended. My lawyer and I then began to file suit against the guy, so that's where we left off a while ago. As of now, the case is over and I can talk about it. So, to first explain why I didn't post any updates previously. When I filed the lawsuit, my lawyer advised me not to post anything about it online. I don't think that this had anything to do with the original post, but what he told me was that if the opposing counsel found a post and was able to link it back to me, they could argue that I was only filing a suit to gain online clout. But now the court case is over, so I can now talk to you guys. We filed the complaint about a month after the last case against me was dismissed. What we filed for was multiple accounts of malicious misuse of due process. After filing the complaint, we needed to serve the papers to the guy. Someone, I don't know who, must have told him because he dodged getting served for multiple weeks. The only reason the process server was able to serve him was because there was a meeting to approve the transfer of a liquor license between two businesses in the city. Ironic. He and his lawyers answered the complaint and said everything in the complaint and the summons was a deliberate misrepresentation of the facts. None of the suits filed against me were in any way malicious, but given that the only thing that changed between most of the suits was the name of the defendant, kind of disproves that. He then went on to say that this current suit was simply a move by me to get revenge on him for trying to protect his business. Pretty much the entire answer was just him saying, "No, you." After that, we moved into discovery, which I will talk about in a minute. Through the discovery process, there were a couple of motions for dismissal by the defendant's counsel. The first was just a general, all the facts are wrong and this is a lawsuit filed in bad faith. This was immediately thrown out by the judge because the 4 suits filed back-to-back with only the defendant being changed indicate that this was potentially a malicious lawsuit. The second motion was that these weren't malicious because the defendants were different. Effectively, the argument is that if the same defendant, then it would be a malicious suit, but because the defendant kept getting changed from suit to suit, that means that there was a legitimate complaint that they were trying to get solved, which technically would be legal and I would have no standing. However, the judge acknowledged that while the argument is legally sound if you simply look at the wording of the law, it completely violates the spirit that it was written in, and the actions of the defendant only serve to confirm that the previous lawsuits were filed in bad faith. So then the motion was tossed out of court. Later during discovery, the defendant filed for a venue change. Seeing how we filed in my local court, they argued that the local jury would be biased towards me. This was dismissed because they forgot to ask for a jury trial. We were perfectly fine with proceeding with a bench trial, so we didn't ask for a jury. The judge decided then that because they didn't request a jury, a venue change would not offer any significant change in the trial. They used that decision and some history I have with the same judge to appeal to the state court to dismiss the case. They refused. So back to discovery. The whole process was extremely slow, and we were still in the middle of discovery when we decided to settle. We had received multiple settlement offers up to that point and rejected all of them, but at the end of November, the defendant decided to fire the manager of one of his businesses. The former manager then decided to turn over some text messages to the court. You see, we requested all communications about the malicious filings from last year that the defendant had made, that included text messages that showed neither counsel nor the defendant did the proper diligence to comply with discovery. The defense was able to get that text removed from the evidence. While the text might not have been able to be used as evidence if we had proceeded to trial, you can't erase that you hid evidence from the judge's memory. They don't tend to take that well. With this coming to light and the chicanery that the defendant had been pulling, the judge was just over it at this point. Our lawyers had to meet with the judge at the very beginning of this month, December, where the defense's counsel was reprimanded. After this, the defendant offered a really big settlement. After my fiancée and I discussed it, we decided to accept the offer. Our wedding is getting close, and frankly, we don't want to deal with court stuff anymore. The whole trial process was still months away, and there wasn't any guarantee that we would have gotten any more money. Unfortunately, it's not the nuclear revenge I, my fiancé, and possibly you were hoping for. Although, the settlement, after I settled the contingency pay for my lawyer, did repay the remainder of my loan, we will have a nice chunk of money left over. Now on to the next story. Story 8. I tried helping a neighbor in need, but they invaded my house and asked to move in. I posted about this one friend who was our neighbor. She was fun to talk to, but in small doses, especially when her kids were around. So I am like my dad, who always helped the less fortunate, and I'm always helping people. Like when I don't need anything, I give it away to the neighbors, Salvation Army, and homeless shelters. This friend, A, and her 3 pushy, aggressive, demanding, needy kids want to eat everything and anything at other people's houses. They will grab anything edible without asking for permission. As giving as I am, I can't tolerate the kind of behavior. These kids also have no respect for anyone and act like they are entitled to everything. They took advantage of me when I told them that they can't help themselves to things in my house and they need to ask, which was a big mistake because they were over almost every day asking for money, things to eat or drink, and to come swimming. I started telling them no, and they all screamed bloody murder while the mom looked on and seemed mad that they were denied things. She has money to smoke the most expensive cigarettes and buy alcohol, beers, and wines. She could spend some on getting her kids snacks, which she claims the kids wipe out in a day when she does buy it. They moved out a year or so ago, and it was such a relief. I saw them from time to time. Last Easter, which is also my close friend's son's birthday, she had a party at a park close by. My husband and I took our little kids there. We stopped by at a coffee shop and I got myself a small chai latte. I was there with her kids. We exchanged some pleasantries, and the oldest son, 14, tries to hand me a solo cup. I said, "Why are you giving this to me?" He said, "I want some coffee." I said, "It's tea, and I am not sharing it because it's a small drink that I was craving." He goes haywire and says, "Didn't you think that I would want some and gotten a bigger drink?" I was pissed and told him, even if it was a large drink, I would not share with someone so unappreciative. I set my tea down at some time to pick up my daughter. I went to get my cup. It's not close to my side, but it's clear across the table where this 14-year-old is standing. I loudly said, "How did my cup get there?" He shrugged, and another lady who I had never met told me that he picked it up and drank some. I was livid and took the cup and drained it on the ground and threw the cup in the trash can. He starts screaming that I could have just given it to him instead. His mother was scowling at me. We just decided to leave. No apologies, nothing. So 3 days ago, I get a call from a making small talk, and then she asked me if they can move in with us into our new house with her kids. I told her no, that it won't be a good idea. Then her 14-year-old monstrous child comes on to let them stay at our home till they find a place for them to get. I kept saying no and that I would not be talking to him and to put his mom back on. She put the caller on speaker, and the kid just wouldn't shut his mouth about how helpful they would be to us. I had to hang up and block their phone number. They also called many of our other friends to ask the same and were told no. They don't help at all and they are burdens to everyone else. They got evicted from their place because they had a filthy apartment and they had mice and roaches. Update 1. Thank you for all the support many of you showed. I couldn't let the family be homeless, and so I called a friend who works for a homeless shelter who works with families with underage kids. They are going to go in the shelter and have room and board, and eventually they will get 2 connecting bedrooms as it becomes available. They will get breakfast, lunch/dinner with snacks, etc., and have to be in by a certain time every night and won't be allowed to come and go as they please after 9 p.m. I believe the mother will have to get random tests done to make sure she's not using. They will all be required to follow house rules and guidelines, and the mother will have to find a job and save any money she earns. They have to save enough for their first and last month's rent and deposit. The kids will have school buses pick them up and drop them off. It's a 6 to 12-month program and they will have to be on their best behaviors. There will be help for them with their behavioral issues. This former friend has found out it's me who had arranged all this and she wants to thank me, but I prefer that she just leave us alone and take advantage of this opportunity. She didn't want to move in with her mother because she has rules as well, so I don't know how they will deal with the rules at that shelter. I think I have done my share now. The ball is in her court. If she doesn't want her kids taken away. Update 2. A neighbor who I considered a good friend in my old neighborhood yelled at anyone who parked in front of her house. She was always telling people to move their vehicles. She doesn't have a driveway. I tried my best to understand her dilemma. She got extremely mad at me because I had to tell her granddaughter to learn to mind her own business and that she was disrespectful and too needy, always asking for things to eat or to buy her things and her stupid jokes, and that she gossips too much. So when my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer while we were in the midst of moving to our new house, all our family and friends rallied around us to help with the moving. One of my cousins parked in front of her house. He is a police officer. He had to complain to her landlord. She screamed at him because she had to park up the street. It made me really mad, so I asked him to bring his extra car and to park it in front of her house when she was at work. She didn't know who the vehicle belonged to, and we occasionally turned it around every few days. That's a petty revenge. Update 3. Last week, I got restraining orders against a so-called friend and her entitled children. 16F, 15M. Part 1. This has been coming a long time. This friend of mine was once my neighbor. She was already renting a house there next to us when we bought our house. We were cleaning up before moving in. She came up to us and introduced herself. After a few pleasantries, she pointed towards the back of our house and said, "The other owner said we could have all the firewood they left behind, and when can we come get it?" Hold on. The owners gave it to us as they were moving several states away. I told her no, we were told it's ours. She said, "But she needs it." I was miffed, but I called the other owner, Jerry, with whom we had become friends. He said, "No way." I said that. She then told me that Jerry and his wife used to let her come swimming any time she wanted to as they were always traveling. Well, it was J and B who did that, but I don't think we would like that. Later, Jerry said, "No, we never allowed that. Gates were there for a reason, plus security cameras for a reason." Her third ask was if they can have the rolled carpet and a large armoire that she said they left behind. I told her, "What are you talking about?" Because the movers just set it there and it was ours. There were no furniture left behind. She sensed we were annoyed and slithered away. I didn't see much of her as we settled in, but we did hear her loud, booming voice a lot, always screaming at her kids that she only got to have every other weekend and holidays. We connected a bit here and there. Her kids are really badly behaved, and people just don't like them. I have a bleeding heart and try to help in every way. When I found out their finances over time, I bought the kids' school clothes and fed them occasionally and gave them groceries. But the friend, I didn't look for a job. When she got the kids more and more, they would knock on our doors asking for everything and very shamelessly. It was awesome when they moved, but they still would come over without notice and it was like they never left. Her two older kids have humongous appetites, and they will grab things out of your plates or they would eat and then ask you if you were going to finish that, pointing their fingers towards the plate. I set some boundaries to not come over, and it did work until we saw them at a park on Easter egg hunt. The son asked me to give him some tea that I had gotten from Dunkin'. Small. I said no. They already don't give much and I wanted it. But when I put the cup down to tend to my little girl, he grabbed it and drank from it. Pissed me off. We left, but again I told them this friendship is over. Update 4. Continuation. Restraining order. They ignored that part and called to ask if they could move in with us. The son D thought he was slick and smooth. I told them, no way am I letting them move in with us and not to ask again. Reminded them that this friendship is over and please leave us alone, and that the mother should have been the one asking and not her snot son. 2 months ago, it was my birthday and my sister and her family were here. We went to our favorite Mexican restaurant. There was 8 of us. Then I hear a voice I never wanted to hear. It was them saying hi, and then they asked if they can join us. My husband told them we have more people coming and it's a family event. They went to their own table and they stared at us. My sister gave me a nice, high-end handbag. The son walks over and asks, "What guy was?" Took a while to register that he was trying to say Gucci. He came back to the table and told me that he looked online and the amount of that handbag could have gone towards their deposit and rent. And then he said, "Return it and give us the money. They are living in a homeless shelter." I said, "It's not my duty to pay for other people." I walked over and told the mother that this is my final warning and to stay away and keep your kids away from us. A few days after that, I was getting on the freeway and saw 2 women and a small child by a car that seemed to have broken down. I got off to offer help and realized that it was this friend of mine. I was so pissed, but relieved to see the son wasn't there. I told her I can take them up to McDonald's and get them off the freeway. She said, "Let me wake D up." Damn, he was sleeping in the back seat. Didn't see him, but I asked that he sit next to me so I can keep an eye on him. He would have destroyed whatever he could in the back. Then he says, "Can you buy me 2 meals from McDonald's?" I said, "I am not buying anything for them because I can't afford it." He got pissed and pointed to my purse and said, "Is that another new handbag?" That's when all hell broke loose. I told them to get out of my vehicle. After I told him off, along with his mother, I still hadn't merged into the freeway. I didn't notice that highway patrol had pulled up behind us. I said, "Good, because he can help you." That's when I felt an excruciating pain in the back of my forearm. The mother had grabbed my arm to ask me to pretend I was driving their car. She said, "I will take yours." She broke skin on my arm and left a huge bruise on my arm. The officer walked up and I told him, "I want them out of my car," and showed him my arm. He told them to get out. After I told him what had happened, she was arrested for not having a license and she blew the sobriety test. So I filed for restraining orders for them to keep their distance from me. The judge saw the mark on my arm and issued the motion. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Discovered my wife's 6-month affair and secret cheating past. Now I'm facing divorce. Hello. I've been a lurker here for a little while, trying to process infidelity in my life. Long story short, my wife and I have been married 8 years, together a few years longer total, and have 2 small kids. This year has been tough. We have had our arguments, but nothing that I would ever think would push my wife to cheat. Anyways, I noticed her lately being distant and uncommunicative and decided to confront her one evening. At that time, she said that she was not happy and couldn't feel a spark anymore. At first, I freaked out on myself, thinking I was being a non-attentive husband, truthfully an issue. However, the next day I caught a very strange message on her phone that was extremely lovey-dovey. I took a look and then found my wife was messaging a man for a long time, with lots of "I love yous" and plans for a future together. Effing destroyed. Anyways, taking the advice of the many threads on here, I didn't confront her initially. I actually read as much as I could, contacted a couple of lawyers for advice, one now on retainer, and got my head on straight and calm. I confronted my wife a couple of days ago calmly and asked if she was having an affair. After a couple of minutes, she admitted everything. Long story short, it's been going on for 6 months, and she claims it's the deepest emotional connection ever. Complete crap, but whatever. To end it all, I gave her my list of boundaries. Cut off contact, MC, etc. The thing that I think is the final nail in the coffin of an honest attempt to reconcile is that she got extremely aggravated with cutting off contact, especially when I told her to do it in front of me, and even insisted on seeing him one last time for closure. I effing held my ground and told her if he is so important, to pack a bag and go live with him, to which she backed off, but not before she told me I was a controlling idiot. Anyways, she sent a text this morning and showed me, but my spidey senses seem to think she will try a different means of communication. I'm thinking there is no hope, and I honestly don't want it at this point, but I just wanted to be able to tell my kids in 20 years that I at least tried. We have MC tomorrow, but I'm thinking it's time to file before wasting any time or grief. I'm cautious to move too fast because of my kids, but is this the right way to do it? Update 1. The past few weeks, simply put, have sucked, but it's given me time for a lot of soul-searching and thinking. As an update from the previous thread, my wife and I did attend some counseling after the initial confrontation, and I will say this particular counselor has been very good about listening to both of us and not assigning blame or anything like that, and helping to navigate our new reality. She has also helped to uncover some structural issues in our relationship, and while that doesn't at all excuse my wife's behavior, it's helpful, at least knowing for a future relationship and not repeating the same mistakes. As also mentioned in the thread, my wife's initial reaction to my boundary to cut off contact with the AP appeared unheeded, and I did catch some small messages between them before she completely went dark with her chat log/phone. After seeing that, I decided to file, and she was served a few days ago. In parallel, I decided to have a heart-to-heart with my father-in-law, as we are super close, and I needed to prioritize the support for our kids versus our relationship, as I could see my wife wanted to sweep this under the rug. Needless to say, my wife was initially extremely upset. Her fantasy was blown up, but our therapist did talk it through with her from my point of view on why this needed to happen, and I think she is starting to realize the consequences of her actions and start to see there are real things that are going to be lost from here on out. I'm just trying to process the new life ahead and the huge change in my identity from a husband/father to something else. Same with her. I will say since I filed, my wife was immediately shocked when I dropped that on her, and she has been very emotional these past few days. I honestly think she thought I would never be able to walk away. I have kept her at arm's length, but I have seen a distinct change in her. On a positive note, we have talked more, kept our conversations civil, and focused on our shared priorities, children mostly. I've made it very clear to her that she left a huge wound on me and that she has to do the heavy lifting to help repair it and give me space and time if I can ever begin to forgive. I'll say it again and again. Her actions are the most selfish, self-centered, horrible thing you could do to a person, but I have not lost sight that we still need to raise our children, and that is my focus point as I navigate how I will move to the next phase of my personal happiness. I wanted to thank everyone for the previous comments and insight. I am honestly proud that I found the strength to not wallow in self-pity, anger, or sadness and was able to make the right moves to retain my dignity and look forward to a bright future. I honestly don't know all the next moves, and my feelings are constantly in flux, but I am starting to feel some inner peace. Thank you all again. Update 2. Hi everyone. I recently posted about my experience, and I want to express my sincere gratitude for the replies and DMs. They have been immensely helpful in getting me through this, and I'm happy to say that I'm feeling much better lately. Currently, I am in the post-serving phase and working closely with my counsel. I'm curious if any fellow betrayed spouses here have taken advantage of the affair fog to negotiate better divorce terms. And if so, how did you accomplish it? My soon-to-be ex-wife is clearly deep in the fog and still involved with the affair partner, for now. I haven't confronted her about it since it seems to serve as a good distraction. I would appreciate any advice on navigating this phase and keeping her off balance, aside from employing the gray rock method and the 180 approach. I've been going out more frequently and being less transparent about my activities. I'm currently in the post-serving phase and still living together due to my desire to spend as much time as possible with my children. I have moved into a separate room which has helped create some distance. I've been practicing the gray rock method with my soon-to-be ex-wife, generally showing disinterest in discussions, although I do have to fake it a bit, especially when the kids are around. They are still young, but I try to stay positive as they can sense a lot. Additionally, I'm making myself less available in the evenings by going out with friends, working out, and engaging in other activities. Do any of you have further advice on how to handle this situation effectively? It's a delicate balance as I want to bond with my kids as much as possible. I've made an effort to endure family dinners and such. Are there any other do's and don'ts you can recommend? The purpose of this post is not for an update. The process is ongoing, and I will provide an appropriate update when the time is right, which will likely be a while from now. My only request is for those who have gone through a similar process to please share any valuable advice, lessons learned, things you wish you had done differently, or any other insights. The advice given in previous posts has been incredibly helpful, and the support I've received from those who reached out in other ways has been amazing. I'm simply reaching out to see if there's more that can assist me during this time. Update 3. I have 2 little ones less than 5 years old. So far, they do not know what is happening. My STBX and I are acting amicably and doing activities with them, mostly separate but once in a while together, and trying to keep them on their normal routine. How did people break the news to them? Were there any short-term or longer-term issues that popped up because of the divorce? What worked to keep them emotionally healthy despite my anger and frustration at the selfishness of my STBX? We have both acted in a way to not impact them, and so far, she has not abandoned or treated them badly by any means, but I do spend more time playing with them, and I do see her spending more time on her phone than interacting with them. We also agreed to no bad-mouthing or negative talk in front of them. So far, I will say it's going good. The only wild card is when we are separated and AP decides to enter the picture officially, but I will just deal with that when it comes. Any and all advice is great. Those two are my world, and Dad is eating crap sandwiches for them while trying to move on. Anyways, going through the deep process and likely to conclude in the next few months. The STBX is still likely seeing the AP but very discreetly. Prior to initiating the D, their messages were very much revolving about starting a new life together, with this particular jackwagon throwing down marriage proposals, maybe joking, maybe not, at my STBX. Anyways, despite the delusion my STBX is operating in, I could see her moving in with AP once we are officially inked and separated. The thought fills me with disgust, as we do have 2 small children, but there are some things I won't be able to control. For those that have gone through this, how did anyone handle having to meet or even look at the AP? I honestly have next to nothing I want to say to this person ever, with the exception of telling them to keep away from my kids. Likely, I will never waste a single molecule of oxygen on him. I know this is not my circus, not my monkeys, and likely this relationship will implode, but still, it causes me movies thinking of the future. Update 4. Hi everyone. As of today, there is some closure coming my way in my saga that started over the summer, and I've been posting, getting advice from everyone here. I just want to start off and thank this community for the incredible support and advice, especially to those folks who privately messaged and offered words of wisdom along the way. This is a crappy process to go through, especially when close family is far away. It sucks to be alone with your thoughts, but there is some wisdom and introspection to gain during this. Anyways, the past few months have been frosty but relatively drama-free, as the STBX and I separated our lives in the house but still did things for our children. The discovery and mediation process proceeded pretty quickly. We agreed on 50-50 for our kids, along with schedules and holidays, and since it's a no-fault state, asset division was by the book with some give and take. I won't go into details too much at this time, maybe another post in the future, but I will be finding a place soon for a fresh start. The final conclusion is on the horizon, but for the most part, the D is complete. As for my advice from this whole fiasco, I learned a bunch of things. 1. Don't bother with a pick-me dance. I tried for a week before wising up to her cheating. My STBX is still in the fog, but it's her decision. She needs to live with it. 2. Lawyer up with an experienced family law attorney who is reasonable. I can't say enough about the person who took care of me. Understanding that this is what I want versus reality was important in converging to the end. I don't have any crazy ridiculous fees, as I did a lot of the prep and avoided hours and hours of back and forth, and this was able to be settled rather quickly. 3. Do lean on friends and family for support as much as possible. 4. Working out/exercise is key to keeping your mental health. I hit the weights a month after D-Day, and I'm starting to reap the benefits, and that confidence has been helpful to get across the finish line. 5. Get into IC and talk with someone. This has helped me tremendously. 6. I realize this from all the posts I read, but the cheaters' decisions are all on them. I heard it all from my STBX. I was a roommate. I love you/not in love. Our marriage went so wrong. I worked too much. Truth be told, now that I know the timeline, our marriage went wrong after she invited someone into her life that was feeding her lines to stroke her ego and give her extra attention, and she had to put up walls and make me the bad guy to justify this in her mind. Sure, she may have been stressed from kids, SL day-to-day life, and a long-term marriage, but not communicating to her husband and confiding in a two-time divorcee/cheater with no moral compass is all on her and a recipe for disaster. The exciting final chapter of AP is yet to be written, but poor choices carry consequences. That is all I will say on the matter. Again, thank you to everyone. I still have a lot of work ahead, but also many adventures in this new chapter of my life. I hope I can return the favor to anyone who needs it. Please reach out if anyone needs a helping hand. I am here. Update 5. I'm on the glide path to settle and move on from my situation that started over the summer. Now that things related to the D are off my plate, I thought about my next steps in life. Obviously, kid time is important, but this whole experience has taught me it's time to really think about myself. In the past couple of months, I took the standard advice to eat better, read, and work out. I have started a regular routine and have been feeling good, and even detected a hint of something in the STBX. Are you working out? Don't worry, not taking her back. Anyways, I wanted to ask if any of you guys decided to do something extra like boxing, SL, Krav Maga, or other types of activity to really ramp up the recovery. I hate to say it, but one of the side effects of this whole issue is making me mentally feel like I was deficient somewhere. I feel like getting and dishing out the punches is the next fire I need to walk through to help me grow. Any advice? And how did it help you mentally move forward? It was informed to me recently that my cheating STBX had also cheated on her previous fiancé with a married man. This was a couple of years before we met. The AP met his fate in an unfortunate fatal car crash. I never knew this until now. Just goes to show the empty hole in a cheater never gets filled. As those of you know who followed my story, I felt tremendous guilt about my role in my marriage, but this revelation hits home. Nothing I would have done would have changed my fate. Question to those who are in the same situation. Did you find out your ex had a cheating past? Update 6. I'm almost to the 6-month mark past divorce and nearly to the year past D-Day. It's been cathartic to post, but I know a lot of folks have followed my journey, commented, messaged, given hope, etc., and like many others posted along the journey to give the unfortunate new folks here some ray of light that despite the darkness you have stepped in, there is another side. I hope I can continue to help in whatever small way I can to anyone in need. I greatly appreciated the support I got and in kind would always love to return the favor. On that note, 6 months past D-Day, and there is a lot of positive news. My house is furnished. My kids are comfortable in the routine and love coming over and have made some neighborhood friends. I am beyond thankful that the little ones managed this process so well, and they just understand there is dad time and mom time, and no complaints or tears outside of them being here. I have immersed myself into a crap ton of home improvements. The house I moved into was occupied by an older divorced gentleman, and some stuff got left to the wayside, but I look at it as an opportunity to make it my own. Along with that, I furnished a home gym in my house with everything I need and can say I'm getting my workouts and boxing in 4 times a week and getting my body back to where it needed to be through this whole ordeal. I also went through a major career change internally to where I work and somehow managed to not mess anything up but instead have gotten kudos. I've kept my situation private, a raise and plenty of exposure to get my career trajectory moving up. Yes, I still struggle daily with mental health and focus, but I manage it with therapy and workouts and things are getting better. I think less of my ex each day, and each small step is a relief. As for her, well, she is still in La La Land, but I can only say we co-parent decently well. I gray rock the heck out of her. Let's be friends, but keep it strictly to kids, and it's been cordial. I'm sure anyone who has followed my story has wondered about the saga of AP. All I can say is the world's greatest love story hasn't gone live, but my kids made me aware recently that he has been around in a small capacity. I have to laugh a little as it's now 6 months past D-Day, and they are still sneaking around. All great hallmarks of a long-lasting, trusting relationship, guaranteed to stand the test of time. I've come to terms that whatever is going to happen will happen, and at this point, I am lucky to be away from a person that is willing to lie to their most trusted partner's face and not feel an ounce of remorse, and I have a solid chance at building an even better life than before. Good riddance and good luck. Anyways, that is all, and yet another big thanks to all those that follow and comment, send ray of hope. I will keep updating and supporting as always. Update 7. I'm 6 months past divorce judgment, and life is going pretty good. The ex-wife decided her life was so terrible that she just had to cheat with the greatest emotional connection of her life, and I pieced out of that as quickly as possible. I got my new house, big backyard, 50-50 with my kids, working out like a fiend, and in general, things are proceeding well, despite having to see the ex-wife as part of kids' activities. One thing I noticed being a divorce guy, you seem to get the side eye, as I call it, or where people view you suspiciously, whether it be new neighbors, most are cool, a couple are a little cold, people at my kids' school, or whatever. It's just an odd feeling you get from people when they know you are divorced. I have no doubt my ex-wife has poisoned the well a little bit at my kids' elementary school, but still, I feel like there is some stigma even with new people. As for me, I'll never say I was a perfect husband, but I worked hard for my family, was always there for my kids, and I'm an active dad with them. And definitely, my wife's infidelity 100% killed our marriage. Never even looked at another woman, despite traveling and even feeling somewhat alone in my marriage, yet I feel like she comes out smelling like a rose. I did make sure to get the story out to friends and family, but the wider net would not know. Anyways, before I blab, has anyone else got this, and how did you best deal with it? I'm simply dealing with all this by being kick crap at dad life, being friendly and humorous with everyone, and not being angry and hating life. Just curious how other situations worked out. I made a small update a few weeks back. Not so much to report, but I wanted to ask if anyone has had the same experience. I'm coming up to 1 year past D-Day. I noticed in the past couple of weeks like someone removed a battery or two. Life is going well. Career is great, house is great, kids, etc. But I'm oddly just exhausted lately. I haven't taken a proper vacation in a long time, and I'm just feeling like I'm running on E. I am just wondering if anyone else had some odd experiences around this time, and what else you may have done to remedy it besides the obvious. I know I have made some progress all around, but the scars will take a long time to heal. FYI, I have started to dip my toes into the dating world, and I'll just say I may have to start posting those adventures soon, too. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Found out my fiancé's secret social account and affair, so I exposed her lies. I, 26M, met my ex, 25F, in college, but we didn't date right away. We ended up running into each other after graduation and hooking up. She and I had been running in the same circles, but we weren't close by any means in college. After running into her, I did admit that I had a bit of a crush on her at some point, and she told me that she felt the same way. Things were good with us for a while. We had been together for 3 years when I popped the question and asked her to be my wife. She was beyond excited and told me that she wanted nothing more than to be my wife. We hadn't been living together at the time. She was on a lease with a roommate, and she didn't want to abandon her. After our engagement, she slowly started moving things over so she could officially live with me when her lease was up. She spent most of her nights at my apartment anyway, so it made sense. Every now and then, she would crash at her apartment if she was super exhausted from work or if she had to get up extra early. She told me she did that just so she wouldn't disturb me when she got up and did her whole makeup routine to get ready. As much as I wish she was at my apartment, I didn't really mind that much since she was only a few blocks away. What I didn't know at the time was that she was using her old room as a place to film for her OnlyFans. I didn't even know she had an OnlyFans. She didn't have the best job when I met her. She was making about $16 an hour, and she was being worked to the bone. She would constantly be complaining about terrible coworkers, the things she had to do, and how exhausted she was at the end of every day. Took me a little while to notice, but she stopped complaining about all of that. Not only was she not telling me about her workday, she suddenly had all of this money to throw into our wedding. She wanted designer dresses, the nicest venue, premium organic food, you name it. I told her I had no idea how we were going to afford her dream wedding, but she just kept telling me that we would figure it out. I found out about her account by complete coincidence. Realistically, there was probably some algorithm that brought me to this. My girlfriend looked like my dream girl, so most of the pictures I would look at online were of women who looked very similar. I was scrolling through some Twitter comments, and I saw one of those ads for an OnlyFans account nested within them. It wasn't from her account. It was from some bot account that just listed a bunch of different models to get views. I had to do a double take when I scrolled past it to make sure it really was her. I was 100% certain that the woman in the video I saw was my fiancé. Now, there's no shame in having these accounts and making money from them. Honestly, if they can hustle doing that, then good for them, but I wished I would have known that my girlfriend had one. I'm a pretty traditional guy, and I don't love the idea of other men online seeing my girlfriend completely naked, doing God only knows what. Of course, I had to click on the account to see what was happening. I paid $14 for a month subscription so I could see for myself what she was posting. For the most part, it was all stuff she was doing by herself. I recognized right away that it was in her old apartment, so it finally made sense why she was so hesitant to leave. I didn't like that she was doing this, and at the very least I wished she'd have told me. I thought maybe we could have a conversation about it, and I could convince her to delete it. It wasn't worth throwing away our future. At least I thought that until I saw a collaboration she did with another creator. They were in her room, and there was a full video of her having sex with some random man. The more I scrolled, the more content of the two of them that I found. It looked like they had filmed 10 videos together and had taken countless photos. All of her subscribers loved it and were asking for more of them together. I scrolled back further and found another collaboration with a woman that I recognized as her roommate. I was shocked by all of it, but I couldn't look away. I didn't understand why she would open an account without speaking to me about it, and how could she so casually cheat on me on the account? I couldn't stay at home and see her, so I crashed at my buddy's place and talked to him about it. He helped talk me down and figure out what I should do. We both came up with the idea of ruining her account. I still had my subscription, so we commented on a post pretending to be another hot girl and invited a bunch of her subscribers to watch an Instagram live of us. Of course, a bunch of them jumped at the opportunity. When I had enough people, I explained what happened, telling all of those men that she had cheated on me and kept the entire account a secret. A lot of them didn't like that because she was pretending to be this nice sweetheart when she spoke to them. They felt like she was lying to them, so they canceled their subscriptions. My fiancée found out and came to confront me at my friend's house. When she saw that I wasn't home, we had a huge argument, and she tried to explain to me that she was doing it for us so we could have a nice wedding. I just told her that the wedding was off and explained that she needed to get her things out of my apartment. She tried to convince me not to leave her, but I had no interest in being with her after what I'd seen. We ended up officially breaking up and calling off the wedding. She's continued using her OnlyFans. Apparently, the guy she had collaborated with had a girlfriend who didn't know about the videos they made. She dumped him and posted a video explaining what happened, and his account tanked, too. I was glad that my video could help her see the truth. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Discovered my daughter isn't biologically mine after an ancestry test. That could only mean one thing. I just found out my 15-year-old daughter is not my biological child. My daughter was preparing for a family tree project for an online class and wanted an ancestry test. My father is half Native American, but he died several years ago, and I don't know precisely what Native American blood is in the family. My daughter came to me because it was my father's side, and we didn't mention it to her mother at the time. Well, it turned out my daughter doesn't have any Native American blood. The obvious conclusion didn't occur to me at first because the truth of the situation didn't seem possible. I assumed there was a mistake. My first thought was that my father hadn't been part Native American, so I took the test, and everything became apparent. It was a very emotional situation for me and my daughter. What I will remember the most was after she started crying. She hugged me so tightly and just kept saying over and over, "I love you, Daddy." At home, I confronted my wife, and she looked like she'd had a stroke. She started crying and apologizing. You can probably imagine it. My wife and I got married because she was pregnant. We had been together for more than a year when it happened. It turns out she was sleeping with multiple guys at the time. She says it didn't mean anything, and she doesn't even remember some of their names. When she realized she was pregnant, she said she wasn't sure who the father was. Since I was unaware of her extracurricular activities, she let me believe I was the father because I was the most financially stable. In terms of that, she may have chosen correctly. I've been very successful in my career, and building passive income streams has been a hobby of mine for a long time. My daughter got my wife to admit to this on tape, as my daughter recorded the whole thing. I asked my wife several times, and she keeps insisting that she has been faithful for the entire time we have been married. I've never suspected anything, but I also didn't realize she was sleeping around before we got married. So I've said I don't believe her. I've come across a lot of the red flags of cheaters, and I can't think of any of them during our marriage. She doesn't use social media, and she has never been guarded about her phone. She only drinks on special occasions and doesn't go out for girls' night or anything. Also, she is a stay-at-home wife/mom, so there aren't any coworkers to worry about. She exercises at home as we have a very nice home gym. I don't believe her when she says she hasn't cheated after getting married, but I can't think of anything suspicious. We have a prenup, so I'm not worried about divorce if it comes to that. My daughter is another story. She is absolutely livid about the whole situation. I know teenagers can be emotional. I certainly remember how I was at her age, but she has never been very expressive, something I thought she inherited from me, nature versus nurture. My daughter can't stand to be around her mother. She has said some truly awful things to her mother, basically variations of calling her a dirty slut who ruined our family. Whenever my wife tries to talk to her, my daughter yells and swears and cries like I have never seen. Christmas is coming up, and my daughter is demanding my wife leave the house until after New Year's so she can spend time with her real family, meaning me. My daughter has even come to me privately saying that in the event of a divorce, she wants to stay with me. She has even asked if it is possible to disown her mother and be adopted by me. I haven't told this to my wife. My wife is preparing to leave for her parents' house for the holidays. My wife and I had talked about the situation but have decided to wait until after New Year's to make any decision. I admit I'm grateful she agreed to leave because, honestly, I need some time to process this. I think I'm writing this as a way to just come to terms with everything that has happened. Edit. After writing this post, I fell asleep for a few hours. I came back to the post after about 10 hours and realized there were more than 200 messages. Thanks to everyone who took the time to comment. It means a lot. Additionally, thanks for all of the compassion and kind comments. I was touched by the displays of support, and I'm not ashamed to say I shed a few tears. I still haven't read every message, but I know I intend to. Whether or not I respond to you specifically, I want to address two consistent things mentioned in the comments. I've had a DNA test after our ancestry tests were different due to her lack of Native American blood. We got proper DNA tests. That was when I confronted my wife. Looking back at the original post, I'm sorry for not making that clear. I have made it clear in no uncertain terms that she is my daughter, and I am her father, regardless of the situation. I've reiterated to her repeatedly that she can stay with me, and I will never leave her. Several comments suggested she might be scared I will leave her or want nothing more to do with her. Nothing could be farther from the truth than that. I tell her every day. Update 1. Thank you once again to everyone who took the time to comment. I was noted to address a few comments with some more information. Some people wanted to know if I have any more children, and the answer is no. For no specific reason, we just never had more children. Once again, I realized I did not make it clear in the original post, but I did have a proper test done and confirmed that my daughter is not biologically related to me. Regardless, I have raised her for 15 years, and she will always be my daughter. I have heard the arguments against this, and I remain unconvinced. My relationship with my wife has always been good. She has always been a wonderful wife and mother, but I admit that this situation has raised some obvious doubts and obstacles. After my wife left, my daughter calmed down considerably but is still obviously shaken. We managed to talk it out, and she explained why she got so upset. Apparently, she knows kids at school whose parents are divorced because of infidelity. In most of the cases, especially when the mother was the one cheating, the father tended to distance himself from the family. My daughter knows of one child, not a close friend, whose father moved across the country after the divorce. The father only sees his children once or twice a year now. All of this was going through my daughter's head when she realized what her mother had done. My wife wants to talk with me and my daughter very much, basically just to give her a chance to explain. My birthday is a few days before Christmas, and my daughter has agreed to a video chat with her mother. I've assured my daughter that if all she wants to do is listen, then that's fine. She doesn't have to say anything. That's what's happened since, and I guess I'll just have to wait and see what happens next. Thanks for reading. Update 2. My daughter and I have been spending a lot of time together, just playing games and watching movies and stuff like that. But even if I'm doing work on my computer or anything else around the house, she just wants to be in the same room as me, even if she is just playing on her iPad. After the initial shock of everything that happened, I started to calm down and reminded myself of a few things. I think the reason I have been so successful is that I don't make emotional decisions or act rashly or hastily. I have always taken time to evaluate a situation and make choices based on evidence, so I hired professional help. I had a private investigator keep an eye on my wife. She has location services on her phone and GPS on her car, but the PI confirmed that she only left her parents' house once to go to the supermarket. Her parents had called me after a couple of days wanting to know if my wife was okay. My father-in-law said my wife only left her room for meals and hadn't left the house since. The supermarket trip was a day or two later. The second guy I hired was tech-savvy. He is a friend of a friend and helped me go through my wife's computer and phone and accounts. I was both impressed and unnerved about what this guy was capable of doing. We did a deep search that went back years. I don't want to go into all the details of my investigation, but I found zero evidence of any type of affair. All of this made me think a lot. I reread my original post and realized that what I wrote about getting married because of the pregnancy might have meant more than I thought. Maybe we didn't get married for love. I certainly think we have grown to love each other, and I still think we are in love. I realized that she lied, but something really great came from that. One person left a comment that I hadn't considered. If you are reading this, then thank you for the insight. The comment talked about how all of my wife's efforts to stay home and be a good wife and mother may have all been intentional and a sign of her remorse and guilt for everything she had done. My wife has been discreetly contacting me since she left the house, and we have chatted a little, but it's not about important stuff. After thinking about everything I didn't find, I agreed to talk with her after my daughter went to sleep. She did not look so great. She had obviously been crying and probably not sleeping well. It was a long conversation, but she just apologized again for lying. She said she had always hoped I was the father. She admitted that she was young, dumb, reckless, and irresponsible, but getting pregnant made her reevaluate everything. She said she regrets blurting out that she chose me because I was the most financially stable, although she admits that was part of it. She had a long list of reasons why she chose me. I'm not going to summarize everything, but I believe she is sincere when she says all she wants is to do whatever it takes for us to be able to be a family again. We agreed it may never be exactly as it was before, but I said I'm not ready to throw away the best 15 years of my life. Yes, that is exactly what they have been. I have to admit that I could not have asked for a better wife or mother to my child. The sense of relief seemed to overwhelm her, and she broke down crying again. Today is my birthday, and as planned, the three of us had our talk online. My daughter was very quiet for most of it. I talked a little about what we had been doing while my wife was at her parents'. Nothing too exciting. Then my wife said to my daughter that she just wants to explain herself. I've always believed that there is a difference between an explanation and an excuse. She did not try to justify herself or put the blame on anything or anyone else. Basically, she told our daughter the same thing she told me. Once again, it was a long conversation that I can't summarize in a few sentences, but it was good. My daughter listened very attentively, and the only thing she asked was if my wife knew who her real dad was. I was unexpectedly moved by my wife's answer. "Your real dad is sitting next to you." That made my daughter cry openly. She apologized for the things she said to her mother in the beginning. I admit that my wife may have just been stroking my ego and saying what she knew I wanted to hear. Based on the fact that I could find no evidence of my wife being unfaithful and just the conversations, I think we can move past this. My daughter's going to start counseling after the new year, and eventually we will have couples/family therapy as well. We talked about having Christmas together in a few days as a family. This whole thing has been a real roller coaster, but I'm optimistic at the moment. I was having a drink by myself to toast my birthday after my daughter went to bed. I think it will be possible for the three of us to be a family again. I certainly want to be. I really liked hearing the things my wife said. Of course, I can guess why she said a lot of them. I'm thinking a lot about what my daughter said about her real father. That hurt the more I thought about it. I don't think she intended to hurt me, and I'm not sure she even realizes how it sounded, but it wasn't fun. We're still spending a lot of time together, and it's been great. I'm not going to ask her about finding her biological father, and if she brings it up, then I'll just cross that bridge when it's time. We went to my wife's parents for Christmas Eve. My brother and mother met us there, and it was a fun time. Before coming over, my wife and daughter agreed that we would be polite and cordial but maybe keep a discreet distance. The day was as you would expect it to be, spending time with family. That evening, my wife came home with us. When we got home, the two of them spent time talking alone with a few Christmas cookies. My daughter went to her room for the rest of the night. When my wife and I were alone, we talked more. She reiterated a lot of the things she had already said. I think I mentioned this already, but there was one commenter, if you're listening, thank you, who said that all her choices to stay home might have been intentional. My wife did not say these exact words, but that was the basic message. After getting pregnant, she realized that she had to grow up, and she said she worked as hard as possible and did everything she could think of to be the perfect wife and mother. By this point, we were actually in our bedroom. She got down on her knees and said she will redouble her efforts to be even better. She said she knew I was considering divorce, but all she said was, "Please give me a chance to prove myself." She said if there was anything I needed from her, anything she could do, then she would do it without hesitation. All she wanted was to keep our family together. It's difficult to fully describe the emotion of everything that has happened, but I believe in her sincerity in this moment. We spent a very passionate night together. Christmas was a good time. I'm not going to say it was perfect. We were aware of the elephant in the room, but it was still a good day. It was the first time just the three of us were alone since the truth was uncovered, but we did have a good day. We had our traditional Christmas breakfast, and then we watched the movie It's a Wonderful Life before we opened presents. One of the gifts to our daughter was a video game console, and she asked if we could organize a family game night, and this made my wife cry. She left the room and came back composed, but I think she just wasn't expecting something like that. I think I already mentioned that we are going to do some therapy after New Year's. I don't think there is anything else to say at this point. I'm not going to say everything will work out for everyone dealing with similar situations, but I think me and my family will be able to move on. Thank you for everyone who commented the first time around. It helped more than I thought it would. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Now on to the next story. Story 12. Polly, I need help. I'm lost in the middle of this right now, and I can't see things very objectively. I didn't want to go to our relationship advice because they're pretty extreme, and I wouldn't put it past them to jump to conclusions about my safety and simultaneously shame me for being poly and for my role in this. One of my relationships was questionable from the beginning, but he was upfront with me, so I trusted him. He told me he and his wife were separated, but they had an unspoken understanding that they would each live their own lives, that they can't get divorced because it would cause hardship and shame for their families back home. He told me this the first time we met and we clicked, so I was okay with it. My nesting partner was concerned but trusted me. Months pass. Things are great between us, except I still don't know his last name. I don't know the name of his business that he owns. I learned he uses a burner phone for me. He is terrified of his wife finding out about me because she'll divorce him and ruin his life, even though they can't get divorced because of their families, and supposedly she's having her own relationships. Then he tells me he's getting pressure from his wife's family and his family to make things work and eventually have kids, but he didn't want to break it off with me. This man literally said, I want to have my cake and eat it too, but gave me an out if I wasn't comfortable with it. I was immediately on board with him reconnecting with his wife, and admittedly, I didn't want to leave him either and wanted to be a little selfish, so I thought I was okay with it. A couple of weeks pass where we don't see each other, during which I get this growing, nagging feeling that things are wrong, and I finally realize that I'm not okay with it. He is literally making me into the other woman. His wife is expecting a monogamous relationship, and he is lying to her face. I try to encourage him to talk to his wife about a couple of things, but he claims that she isn't mature about things like this. I've lost count of how many red flags I've typed out now. Here are a few more. When I told him that I realized I'm not comfortable with how the boundaries of our relationship have changed, he got very passive-aggressive and told me that he thought I would always be there for him selflessly. I told him I didn't realize selfless meant zero boundaries, and he responded, selfless means not thinking about yourself. He would never initiate conversation unless it was to complain about me not initiating conversation every single day. He keeps telling me that our relationship is special and unique, and things are different with me. When I called him out on what he said in the first bullet point and said he clearly didn't want a relationship with a whole person and only cared about his own needs and disregarded mine, he said I misunderstood and he wants a chance to clarify, but he can't clarify over text. But he's so sad that I felt this way about this misunderstanding, and he thought I knew him better than that, and he was always considerate and caring, and then he asked if I was still mad when he still refuses to clarify anything over text. I obviously can't continue any sort of relationship with him. I thought there was a chance I could still support him or be a friend, but I don't think I can trust anything he says. I'm fluctuating between being furious with him and being furious at myself for willfully ignoring red flags and also straying from my own values. And now to the reason why I'm here. Is he actually a massive piece of... Was he always a manipulative Chicano, or do you think he's just a selfish, dumb? How do y'all with more poly experience than I do 1 year deal with situations like this? Also, is he actually love-bombing/manipulating me? Or am I just reading too much into it? I need a sanity check. Edit. Y'all are being much kinder to me than I am. Thank you. Update 1. It's only been 13 or so hours, but y'all have helped me in ways I didn't expect. I came in with a lot of self-judgment and doubt and expected a lot of hate for my part in it. Funny how manipulative people can make us think bad situations are all our fault. Huh? Anyway, I took a lot of what y'all said to heart and was already on my way to fully acknowledging the Soviet parade of red flags this guy had and my part in all of it. Last night, I did try to find his last name, so I had the option of telling his wife, but I struck out on that. I got laid off a couple of months ago, and I'm sorry, but I can't justify paying for a background check. So today, I did what almost everyone, including my NP and friend, has been saying from the beginning and blocked him. But it felt shitty to do it without any comment at all. So I sent him this. I'm not meeting you in person. You've had plenty of chances to turn this around, but instead of addressing the issues, you love-bombed and deflected and kept promising later. You may love me, but you clearly don't respect me or your wife. It was tempting to meet up with you to hear how you were going to try to dig your way out of this hole, but ultimately, it wouldn't change anything. I'm done. Then I immediately blocked him on everything. My NP said it was harsher than they expected from me, but they were proud of me. And GL, it still hurts. He kept saying he was going to respect my decision, but right now he's fighting for me, which my NP said sounds contradictory. I have to agree. I'm a little worried he's going to show up at my place, but I hope his sense of self-preservation will win out. If he shows up at my place, I'll show up at his. Thank you all for the sanity check and reminding me that I am human and will continue to make mistakes and get hurt. Small edit. I did find a couple of actually free reverse phone lookups, and they didn't have a name associated with the number at all, reaffirming that he used a burner phone for me. Update 2. Hi everyone. I wanted to give a bit of a positive update. 8 months ago, I posted asking for advice on how to navigate realizing that a guy I was dating was just using polyamory as an end to using me to cheat on his wife. You can read it here. The community here was telling me a lot of what I knew but didn't want to admit or didn't fully realize, and a lot more that I needed to hear. I want to give an update on my situation with him and my new partner, who has shown me exactly what poly is supposed to be. First, the jerk. I'll call him Nick because that's his name, and even if he or someone he knew somehow saw this, there are so many Nicks in the world. I know this paragraph is pretty rough, so if you want to skip down to the positive part, I marked it with a blue heart. I did not meet him again, which many of you will be happy to hear. He doesn't need closure, and he sure as hell doesn't deserve any more attention from me. What I realized later is that he really truly had me believing that all of the things he was mad at me about were my fault and my responsibility. Stress-triggered symptoms of dormant gonorrhea, which I passed to him, thinking I simply had a sore throat. He panicked, told me that he absolutely could not have anything on record with his insurance or the government or whatever, got a massive panel tested, positive for HPV, which I did not test positive for, by the way, but he still blamed me. The last time we met, he told me that he was doing me a favor by forgiving me and seeing me again and that I needed to make it up to him. I believed him and therefore didn't fight back when he hit me. I kept this from my partners and my therapist for a long time out of various degrees of shame. I told Nick I was done, saved the screenshots, and blocked him on everything. I wasn't going to give him a chance to smooth talk his way back into my good graces, nor was I going to give him a chance to attack me or worse. I didn't have time for his when I was just trying to survive after getting laid off in January. For months later, while I was at my friend's wedding at the end of July, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Nick. He said he respected that I apparently blocked him on everything and wouldn't reach out again, but he wanted to plead with me one more time to meet him and give him a chance to explain himself because he hates that I think he would believe those things. Barf. I had a full panic attack during the wedding, which both partners were very helpful in guiding me through, and struggled for a long time on whether to respond, whether to threaten him with telling his wife, whether to file a police report, etc. etc. Ultimately, I did the smart thing and just didn't respond and didn't do anything at all. I was scared for a while due to past trauma of exes coming up out of the blue to try to weasel their way into my lives and also being very aware of the realities of our SLW women Horus. I was scared to leave my apartment alone at night for a while because I couldn't trust that his self-preservation would be stronger than his ego. Ultimately, I have healed. Nothing has escalated, and it has been another 4 months of silence. I am genuinely at peace with my past with him and my present and future without him. Now for the good part. A couple of weeks after I broke it off with Nick, I was back online, refusing to let Nick or my fear of him control my dating life. I was going to take it slow and stay cautious but optimistic. I had a couple of good dates, but one really stuck out and lasted. My new partner, who I will call Dave because why not, has been in poly relationships for over 5 years. We spent the first week just texting, laughing, and discussing boundaries, and then for the first meetup/date, he invited me over to his place for dinner along with several of his friends/roommates, where he made ramen from scratch. We spent the evening talking, laughing, playing Cards Against Humanity. I told him that inviting me over to a group dinner for a first date was a choice, But it worked out since I unanimously passed the vibe check, including from his spouse. Major green flag for me being approved by the spouse LOL, and his friends were fantastic wing people haha. We've been together for 7 months now. We joke that his kink is consent. Dave has helped me through a lot of the grieving that comes with escaping abuse. He has never made me feel bad about setting boundaries and has wholeheartedly supported and accepted them. He, his spouse, my NP, and myself all get along really well and had the chillest friendsgiving ever. I helped Dave and his spouse paint and move into their new house. I have met his mom and several of his childhood friends. My family and friends live several states away. We've gone to a wedding together. We currently have very similar lines of work, so we are able to really understand each other's vents. Long story short, I never really believed that it was possible to have 2 healthy relationships, much less 2 at the same time, so thank you all for giving me the kick in the pants that I needed. The poly community as a whole has been wonderful, and I've been truly happy and at peace for a while now. Now on to the next story. Story 13. Refusing to buy my entitled daughter her dream car after she gave her number to the man who humiliated me. Now my wife is leaving me. So last week, my wife, 2 kids, and I went out to the zoo for my daughter's 23rd birthday. We were having a great time. While leaving an enclosure, some woman sort of cut us off and pushed in front of us to get out first. She didn't actually touch us, and it wasn't that big a deal, but it was a little obnoxious. I said, "There's no need to push ahead, love." She responded with something like, "How did I push ahead? It's not like Teresa Q. I just tooted and thought, whatever, not worth it." But then some giant guy who was apparently her son. I didn't realize this because they looked very different. She was white, he was mixed, not that it matters, said to her, "What, does someone have a problem?" And she pointed me out. Her son then turned around and started aggressively antagonizing me for no reason, telling me to keep my comments to myself, called me a Karen, and kept calling me tiny, saying I had little man syndrome. Just really off-the-wall stuff for what I thought was a benign comment. Then, for some reason, my daughter, 22F, felt the need to take up for this guy and started saying stuff like, "Why are you like this? Why do you feel the need to say something?" And then started apologizing to the guy and agreed with him that I'm a Karen. I was really taken aback by this. Then the guy asks how old she is, she tells him, and he asks for her number. She gives it to him. He hands his phone over to her, and she types in her number. The whole time, this guy is staring at me with a gleeful grin on his face. When my daughter comes back over to us, I ask her, "What the hell was that?" And she just says, "What? He's cute, and you need to be put in your place every once in a while." I said, since that's what she thinks, she can buy her own car for her birthday. She clearly thought I wasn't serious because when she asked if we can look at cars and I told her she can look herself because I'm still not paying for it, this has divided my house, with my son taking my side, saying she was out of line, and my wife saying it's not worth ruining my relationship with her over. I feel like if not getting her a car as punishment is enough to ruin her relationship with me, then I probably spoiled her too much. Anyway, she already has a car that I bought her 2 years ago, which works fine, so it's not like I'm exactly depriving her. I am at work on my lunch break right now, so I can't really reply. I have skimmed the comments and will address a few things I feel relevant. The car I bought her 2 years ago was a runaround, 500 pounds secondhand. It is in fine shape but not exactly the nicest car. I had promised my daughter an Audi, as my son is going traveling for his 21st birthday, which I'm paying for. The car she wanted was roughly the same cost. She doesn't live at home. She hasn't since she moved out for uni at 18. I don't feel like I am a Karen, but I'm not shy to speak up/complain if I feel I must. If people are rude or something is not up to my standard, I will happily say something. I realistically couldn't beat up the 6 feet 4 inches or whatever 20-something-year-old mouthing off to me. I am 47 years old and have worked an office job for the last 20 to 30 years and have a bad back. I got home about an hour ago, and my wife called me into the room to talk. She gave me an ultimatum. She said I can either swallow my pride and buy my daughter the car, or she will buy the car out of her own money. My wife doesn't earn as much as me but still has a well-paying job and can afford it. She said that everyone is sick of my attitude in public, that every time we go out, I get in some sort of altercation or disagreement with someone over some petty thing. I think this is a gross over-exaggeration, But my wife showed me texts from my daughter asking if she can go out with just my wife because I always do something to embarrass everyone. My wife refused and offended me, saying that's not true. And that's why, when I got in that argument, my wife said nothing about my daughter's actions. She said she isn't going to punish my daughter because I can never keep my mouth shut, especially when my daughter said she didn't want me there because something like this would happen, and she defended me only to be made to look like a fool. She says that my daughter barely likes me as it is, and if I do this, I shouldn't be shocked when she stops talking to me completely. I asked my wife if all I am to my daughter is a piggy bank, and she told me to stop playing the victim. She said it's up to me what I do with my money, but my daughter will be getting the car one way or another, so I can either make her hate me for no reason or I can swallow my pride and get her the car myself. I don't really know where to go from here. Sorry I didn't really respond. A lot happened yesterday. After everything, I called my daughter and apologized because I wanted to talk about everything. My wife said to just let it go. But clearly everyone had a problem with me that I didn't know about, so I wanted to get to the bottom of it. So I waited for my son to get home, and my daughter drove round a little later. We all sat down and decided to talk. I started by doing what many of you suggested and asked for actual examples rather than just accepting their word for it. And honestly, a lot of it sounded ridiculous. The fact that I sent back a steak twice because both times it was undercooked, as if it's a crime to want a 180-pound steak cooked correctly. The fact that I argued with someone who sat in our assigned seats at a cinema, even though it was nearly empty, again as if it's a crime to want to sit in the seat I paid for when there's dozens of other places for these people to sit, and other equally silly things which I can't be bothered to get into and don't even really remember as a result of the insignificance of it. Despite me thinking that it was all ridiculous, I said I would do my best to be a meek pushover in public if that was the only way to get them to like me, and that I would get the car on one condition: that my daughter hadn't actually texted the guy who abused me. I asked to look at her messages, and she said not to even bother because she had texted him, and I didn't have the right to control who she talks to. I said that is true, but I do have the right to spend my money on whatever I want, and I'm not getting my daughter a car. She has one that works fine. And even if I am an ass in a situation where her family is getting threatened, she sided with the aggressor and then doubled down on that, and that is unforgivable. My daughter blew up at me and said that I am a petty, little pig-headed man with a Napoleon complex and that all the money in the world hasn't stopped me from being a loser. I said, oh yeah, because the guy who screams at old men is such a winner. And she screamed at me that I'm not a victim, and then something about how cathartic it was to watch someone stand up to me, and that how the second he did, she watched me shrink back into the little I'd always been growing up. That was the last straw. I told her to get out, but she doubled down and told me that my wife had told them about me being bullied growing up and that that was why I am the way I am. I saw my wife turn pale as a ghost at this comment. This is something I confided in her in private. Clearly, this is why my daughter stopped respecting me. Obviously, I wasn't cool enough for her or whatever. I was speechless, but my daughter carried on. She said, make a genuine promise to Jake. He can still go to Cambodia and ask him what he really thinks. I just nodded. Her brother begged not to be put in the middle of this, but I insisted. All he said was, sometimes you can be a bit much, Dad. My daughter called him a moron and just walked out. My son ran off to his room, and my wife drove off after my daughter. She didn't come back last night. I've not heard from my wife or daughter since. I called out of work. My son left for university without saying a word to me. I've barely slept a wink. I can't believe it. I'm a cliché. A rich old man whose family hates him. If I was lost before, now I'm genuinely clueless about what I'm supposed to do. Everyone has been asking for an update, so here it is, though there isn't really much to tell. My daughter blocked me everywhere since she left. I did go to reach out, but saw she had blocked me. I haven't heard anything since. My wife is staying with her parents and is refusing to come home unless I agree to individual therapy and family therapy, which I'm still refusing because I feel it is a waste of time. I know myself and I know my mind, so what if I like to complain sometimes? That doesn't make me mentally ill. My son and I are probably the biggest update, I guess. We are falling out hard. He is blaming me for tearing the family apart by being stubborn. He says I drove my daughter away and I drove my wife away, and I'm going to drive him away too unless I try to make it right with everyone. He is mainly mad at me for refusing my wife's demands to therapy. He is still living at home as it is close to his university, but he says that if I'm not at least trying to make it right by the time he finishes, he will leave and not look back. It turns out the reason his sister called him a moron is that he actually agrees with her more than he let on. He says that I'm a bully, that I bully and get condescending and rude to people in public and then play the victim if anyone calls me out on it. He says I am rude to everyone everywhere I go and that I'm rude to everyone at home too. He says that I lord my money over people and that if anyone disagrees with anything I do, I take it away. He said my daughter hasn't liked me since she was 16 and that she always talked about escaping me. He said she never even expected me to actually go through with getting the car because she knew I'd snatch it away the first time she did something I didn't like. Apparently, the whole thing was a test. She had made it clear to everyone that if I did, in fact, snatch the car away at the last second, she planned to never speak to me again. My son knew this. My wife knew this. That's why my wife was so adamant on me getting the car for my daughter. That's why my daughter was so upset about me not getting it because, in her mind, it was me finally killing the relationship. He also told me that my wife has defended me for years and years, that she didn't betray my trust, but she told the story of my upbringing to try and stop him and his sister from hating me. He said my daughter has openly said she should leave me for years and that my wife always told her off for that, but now I finally pushed her away too. He admitted he never thought she would ever actually leave me but said he's proud of her for standing up to me finally. He also said he doesn't care if I take away his birthday trip, that he wants me to fix the family, and that is more important than some holiday. I've decided I'm not going to take away his holiday, as that would probably just give them even more ammo against me, but I'm also not doing therapy. They may need therapy, I don't. I am fine with who I am. I like myself even if they don't. That's basically it. Now on to the next story. Story 14. I told my pregnant wife I'd be with my dying mom instead of her during delivery. Now she's banned me from the delivery room and we're separated. To get started, I am 36M, and my wife is 33F. We are expecting our first child soon. My mother, who is 70, was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and has been hospitalized since. It is so bad. Doctors say she will not survive since treatments aren't working well on her. My dad died when I was young, and my mom took care of me while working 2 jobs so that I could have a good life. I feel I owe everything to my mother. I bought her a house and whatever she needed so that she could live her older years well since we had to struggle so much. When I got home from work and visiting my mom, my wife and I were talking, and she asked, if you got a call that I was in labor or your mom was going to die, who would you pick? I told her I would pick my mom. She asked why, and I told her that I wanted to be there to say goodbye to my mom since I would never see her again and so she would have somebody there in her final moments. She got mad and said, what about her and our baby? I told her I would try to be there as fast as I could after my mom, but that most likely wouldn't happen, so I told her not to worry about it. She was still mad and told me to get out of the house. I left, and now I'm at my mom's house. Edit. To everyone saying that I would be leaving her alone. No, I wouldn't. She would have her mom there. She has said she wanted her mom there with her. Yes, I was right for leaving my house. It was either I leave or she go, and I was not about to put my pregnant wife out of our house. Yes, I've been there for her. I have taken off work to comfort and help her in any way she needs during this pregnancy. Edit 2. I keep getting the same question about why I left my house. Even though I may own the house, it was late, and I didn't want my pregnant wife out late at night, but she told me to leave, so I knew it was either me or her. 2. My mother is in the hospital. She is not at her house. 3. I thought a lot about what a lot of you said about how I should put her first, but she doesn't put me first at all. She chooses her sisters over me all the time. 4. I do not make her feel second. I have put my wife first, especially in emergencies, and I have tried my best to comfort her. I have gone home, and now I'm thinking I don't need to apologize to y'all. I really don't know. Thanks to everyone who's commented relevant comments. Update 1, January 3rd, 2024. Hello again. People have read it. Some of you asked for an update, so here it is. I went back home yesterday afternoon. She wasn't there. I assumed she was at her mom's house. She came back in the evening and we had a talk about what happened. She did apologize for asking the question and that when she thought about it, she understood my answer because she would do the same. I asked her why she asked. She said she didn't know and thought I was going to pick her since I normally do. I kind of just said, okay, and moved on. I did tell her I want marriage counseling after or even before the baby's born. She asked why. I told her how I felt, and she denied it, so I had to give her proof. Then she started crying and got mad and told me to sleep in the guest room instead of kicking me out, so I guess I got a win there. Anyways, she also told me that she no longer wanted me in the delivery, which I was fine with. I understand to an extent where it's coming from. I will go into therapy, which was suggested, and I think I do need it anyways. That's it. Thanks for the advice you all gave. Some good and bad advice, and sorry if my comments came off as mean. I'm not really a friendly person till you know me, especially if you're accusing me of something. Update 2. January 4th, 2024. Hello people. This will probably be my last and final update. I read a lot of your comments and I did apologize not for bringing up marriage counseling but for the timing I brought it up and that I did show her proof. She did forgive me and told me I was still not going to be at the birth of our child. I said to her that it was okay and that I had accepted it and I wasn't going to fight her on her choice. I did tell her that I think she and I both need some space before the baby comes, to which she agreed. I told her I would leave and that she could have the house and that if she needed anything to call or text me. No, I'm not at my mother's house. I'm at a friend's house. He doesn't live there anymore, but he usually rents it out. To all of you asking why don't you kick her out? It's because I'm the only person who makes money in the house, and I know, especially now, if I kick her out, it will be called financial/emotional manipulation or even abuse, so it's better if I leave. Yes, I do plan to go back home when the baby is born. And to someone who asked, I do plan to take paternity leave. No, she does not know where I'm at. She didn't ask, so I didn't tell, mainly because her family would be banging on my door. To people who I know are going to ask why aren't you fighting harder to be in the delivery room? I've learned that some things I cannot control, and one thing is people. If she doesn't want me in there, I won't be. My main example is if I had gotten someone pregnant in my 20s and I said, get an abortion, just because it's my baby as well doesn't mean that I can control what she does, so it's her body, her choice. Lastly, to people who are saying they need more details. I'm not used to just randomly talking about myself. It's been that way since I was a child. I've gotten better since I was a kid, but it's still a struggle, so if you have a question, give me a specific question because I answer what you ask, not the above. And about the divorce thing, I do care if she divorces me. I do love her, but I cannot control how she feels, so personally, I won't beg her not to. I will suggest that we get help, but if she doesn't want to, then that's fine. I'm secure. What I mean by that is she will get nothing in the divorce. Does she know that? I don't know. Update 3, February 5th, 2024. Hello people. I have good and bad news, so I will start with the good news. My wife had the baby on January 26th. It's a girl, and I love her so much. I wanted to name her after my mother, but we found a compromise, and her middle name is my mother's name. To the questions I'm going to get about was I in the delivery room? I was not. I did ask, but she got to know, and she said she had already told her sister and that she couldn't hurt my feelings, which, okay, by then I had stopped caring a lot. The bad news is my mother died. She died a week before my baby was born. A decent bit of her friends came to the funeral. She didn't come to the funeral. She made stupid excuses, and I just said, forget it. It was nice, though. I am mad that she wasn't there when I needed her, so I haven't been talking to her much. So I won't yell at her. We talk about the baby and her, and other than that, we don't talk. I'll bring up marriage counseling in a few weeks, but for now, I'm going to enjoy my baby and love her. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.